going out there, guys? Welcome to BALLBUSTERS, episode 83. Natural science and the scientific method. As usual, if you'd like to support this channel, there are PayPal and Patreon links in the info box below. Let's roll on over to the panel in Discord. Although we had some technical difficulties earlier, let's see how we're rolling now. We got the distinguished Nathan Oakley back with us. How's it going out there, Nathan?
Very well. How are you?
I'm fine.
That's good to know. 2 weeks rolls by real quick when you were on the last show.
Yes, it does. We missed you.
Yeah, child injury. Nothing too exciting.
Yep, I understand it. Yep.
Well, thanks for giving me so many feed lines to work off on your show, QE. It's good to not be in the driving seat for change.
Yeah.
Is that yeah. You're not really even listening to what I'm saying while you press buttons to set the show up.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, I'm a mind reader. I know what's going on. A bit while he should be hosting, he's pressing buttons. And then while I'm pointing out that I'm having to basically be the co-host for real right now and do a bit of actual work, I was hoping that I could nip off and make a cup of coffee. I've got to be honest. The coffee machine's warm. I thought a quick intro, get washing on with that cup of coffee. No chance.
I call it banana time, Nathan.
It's a banana time? What kind of comment is that?
Banana time in that if you listen to QE live on there's a point where I have to, I know when he started eating his banana, it means continue talking.
Please, no food.
I didn't.
Yeah, don't worry about that, Neil. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I've got a trick up my sleeve for if it does happen. I can lower the level, not to obscenity or crude talk, but something that's more annoying than talking about food. I will reveal my magic powers when the need arises.
What, sound?
Oh no, far more boring. We'll find out, won't we, if we talk about food.
Not Tuesday, is it?
Not Tuesday.
Huh?
Science Day.
It's what?
Science Day.
Did you say science or viance?
Oh, God. Science Day.
Oh, it's Science Day. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's what the subject of the show is today. Part 3, right?
Yeah, it's part 3. Yep.
You're going to have to fill me in on what part 2 is about. I wasn't here.
Part 2 was the absolute foundation of the entire presentation.
So it's about cause and effect reasoning, construction of hypotheses, things like that.
Yeah, we're going to go over a little bit of that. There's some crossover, obviously, that we'll head back to. What an experiment is, why it's important, why it's a necessity to even speak of science, natural science. Of course, when we say science, again, we're meaning natural science. That's the subject that we're talking about, not science as in knowledge, just general knowledge. That's not what we're talking about. And as soon as you hear somebody say that, you should stop them, right? And say, no, the context of our discussion is with natural science. We're going to see that here today, as usual. But it's important to identify and define the terms that you're talking about. So it limits confusion because it seems that Baltards modus operandi, whether they're doing it intentionally or unintentionally, probably unintentionally because they're as dumb as a bag of hammers, they will try to convolute the situation and you'll be talking about the conversation for the next 20 to 30 minutes, and then everyone gets pissed off and quits and not get to the actual subject material. I'm sure we've all experienced that.
I think I just did. What were we talking about?
It's Science
Jack.
Day.
I was kidding. I was just kidding.
This is going to
Yes.
be...
It's very easy.
Go ahead.
Whoever that was.
We covered this in the week, Nathan. Is it Science Day? And actually, it was probably during another banana time or probably coffee time for you in one of the after shows. And we were scrolling through Danny Faulkner's stuff. And you definitely weren't there. But we scrolled back to his alternative scientific method. I don't know if you come out in the replays yet.
Who were you talking? Who were you talking? Did you say Danny Faulkner?
Yeah, this week we've been looking at his Answers in Genesis webpage, and it's really long. Yeah, it's got so much juice in it, mate. It's one of those gifts that keep on giving.
Right. It's going to give next week because I did see something in Master B, because I guess you guys are posting the information in Master B on Danny Danny the dipshit astronomer. He's going to come up next week, not this week. So go ahead, but I'm sure you guys can run with this one. Go.
There's nothing elaborate. It was just to say that he presents one of these like make an observation, not is it? Have an idea diagrams.
Oh God, did he get it from Science Buddies?
Yeah, probably. You know what I mean? The point I was making fundamentally in the middle, the main root of it, the things that instead of just a straight forward down line, you get side arrows off to feedback loop on, was to define a hypothesis and then construct an experiment. Them two were like following each other, and everything looped back. And this is if we're going to go to that, the crux of it. They can wrap all the woolly stuff behind it, reword, make an observation, observe a phenomena, whatever. But fundamentally, it's hypothesis and then an empirical way of testing that hypothesis through experiment. And again, through his waffle, he didn't address. He waffles around it, says, "Oh, look at this little bit. You can ask a question. These flat earthers don't know what they're on about with terms of science law. It's not observing natural phenomena. You can ask a question. Therefore, their structure is too rigid."
Danny,
fundamentally, at the heart was those two things.
I'm sorry. Danny has this propensity. I know Danny from 2016, where I challenged that numpty. I should publish that email conversation, but I digress. Danny has this propensity to treat his audience members from AIG like total dumbasses. He thinks they're dumbasses. So any of you guys reading anything from AIG or Answers in Genesis from Danny Faulkner, he thinks you're stupid. So he tries to take advantage. He has that in his mind. So he tries to take advantage of that. If you ever listen to Danny talk or any of his writings, every subject is more complicated, and that secret knowledge is found in graduate level academia physics studies. There's no other way that you can really know the actual knowledge from those subjects without being in graduate level studies. See, that's Danny's little game. And then he never explains anything. If you follow that, right? He tries to, but it's like when he does it, it's like elementary level. Oh, hold on a second. Shout out Tony Wickham. Hey, thanks Tony for a super chat. If Betty was the first in space, she can change her name to Betty Van Halen. Yes, she could. Thanks, Tony.
He did that. He did that with the Coriolis effect.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about.
He has a propensity to do it. Now, he didn't do it in our little email discussion, but I caught him early. I think I was the first one that caught him, right? In this flat earth ordeal. And it was a belly laugher. His story has changed multiple times, by the way. If I'd pull out that full body of the email, you'd be laughing. But back to the topic, that's Danny's little game. He's a numpty dipshit, and he thinks his listeners are really stupid. And I know I already said this, but that's what he does if you follow him. All these subjects are like secret knowledge in graduate level physics studies in academia. He's a total muppet. He'd fail 5th grade general science, but we're going to highlight him. I'm going to highlight him specifically next week. I'm going to drag him around by his short hairs with a simple, he's got a foundational misunderstanding of what natural science and the scientific method is. That's the least of his worries from Doofus Danny. But I know I rumpushed you, Adam. Go on.
I think that was literally the point. Where just to reiterate that, you know, these things are being presented, alternative methods. Just to reiterate the point again, the fundamentals, the heart of all of these little diagrams, flow charts, is hypothesis and experiment. It's the thing that gives all of it strength. And whatever you define, whatever feedback loops you've got to research and failed hypotheses, failed experiment, yeah, the fundamental that gives you the assurity of whether you've ascertained a cause and effect relationship is that hypothesis and the empiricalness of the experiment that validates it. So you can wrap all the waffle you like around that, yeah, Dr. Danny. That's its heart. That's the truth. That's the thing that gives it power. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Tony. Sorry, Adam. I agree, Tony. The Coriolis got the ballers in a tizzy, boy. And I think I think Danny put his foot in the water with that one too, didn't he?
Yeah, that's where I got involved. I mean, I don't look at these people. I'm completely reactionary on my show. So when someone comes along and presents something from Danny Faulkner, and originally I think it was the Christians on the panel that were getting panties in a twist because he's going over to anti-flat Earth channels and siding with atheists so he can bash flat earthers. Paula actually specifically said that, although I'm not aiming this directly at her. But that's, I assume, how it ended up coming across my desk, so to speak. But like with anything, like with Wolfie, right? The moment I see something in there that's specifically contradicting what the Globe claims in Coriolis terms, then I'm going to pounce on it. By pure coincidence, a few days earlier, we'd had a guy claiming to be a pilot on that had fallen into the same trap, again, coincidentally, the Wolfie 6020 had fallen into, which is claiming that the Coriolis effect causes things. That's the bottom line in this. I mean, I didn't want to give it so concisely on my own show because, you know, they listen, whether or not they're too scared to listen to you, or maybe I'm making assumptions that they don't listen to you in that regard, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yep.
I don't want to give the game away too much because I don't want them to know so concisely, which is why I'm waffling now over the top of the bit that I just said earlier that I won't repeat.
I'll give you a fill on this. Is just to respond to Tony Whitcomb. Coriolis has got ballers in a tear. Yeah, it has, mate. It really has. Because Rufy's gone. Nathan will be aware of this, and the guys in the war room. I've shared a bit of his correspondence. It's got him really in the tears, to the point that you'll have heard Nathan having a go at Wolfie. This is the response I got from Glenn. Are you going to call out Nathan on demanding Wolfie be doxed? Wolfie doesn't, and this is the best bit, right? So let's not address any of the points that Nathan's made with regards to the incompetence of a so-called pilot that accounts for Coriolis effect. Okay. His defense is Wolfie doesn't fly for an airline. He's privately employed. I did say that is reassuring to hear. So he can only risk the lives of people who privately employ him. It's good to know that his lack of knowledge won't affect the general public.
Wow.
And let me just add one last point, because this is the point. This is where their argument is still at, Tony. This is where they're still at. This is Glenn's, Rufy's best response. When you accept conservation of momentum and correct Nathan on his idiotic Charlotte to LAX thing, let me know. Thumbs up. Yeah, we've got on worried, mate.
Conservation of momentum. He's another one of those numpty dipshits, right?
I know.
Ask him to define it. Of course, he says definitions are meaningless, so he won't be able to define it anyway. So, Rufy, the numpty from down under, the conservation of momentum, which one might that be?
All right, stop. Why are we defining that? Or asking him to define it? Why is it that his opener... I haven't read any of this, by the way, Adam. I'm really sorry if I'm supposed to be following along. No, I haven't.
At no point do I expect you to follow Twitter, mate. No.
I completely put down so far here.
It's really the conservation of stationary momentum.
So his first opener, from what you've just said, is when Nathan is demanded to accept the conservation of angular momentum.
No, momentum. He didn't say angular.
Conservation of momentum. Regardless, why would I need to be... why would I need to be accepting that? Do I claim it? Am I refuting it? Is it, more importantly, the globe claim? I'm going to plug my own show, not just because I want to plug my own show, but it's directly relevant to this. So, brace yourselves, guys. Let's take a few minutes. After the show ended on Thursday, I accidentally didn't shut down one of the lines, which I typically do so I can shut down Voice Meter. But while I'm clicking around to upload things, I'm in autopilot, getting things done as quick as I can. I'm actually listening to what's going on in Discord. Because I've already minimized things, and I'm like, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to go through the routine, go through the motions, get everything uploaded. Then I'll shut down Discord. I'll just go back to that step that I've missed, rather than getting out of the routine. But as a byproduct, I'm listening to these people in Discord contradicting what we've discussed on the entirety of the live show and after show. Now, I've been told this happens, but I've never actually experienced it in this way before. So I start recording, open my mic, set a couple of things back up that I'd just shut down, and ask the question, why are you guys going against the globe claim? Because that's what's going on here with Rufy. Once Nathan accepts, why? Shouldn't you be defending the globe claim of Coriolis effect? Because it's not exactly something that people are unsure about. People are very acutely aware that the globe claims Coriolis effect. So when Nathan accepts the conservation, no. I'm not fighting against any conservation of angular momentum when it comes to the globe claim, because they've got a very specific claim. It's got a name that everybody's familiar with. Coriolis effect. Why would I be accepting conservation of anything when the globe's claiming Coriolis effect? Further to that, why are you asking me what I'll accept? I'm going to start asking you, Rufy. You can be the first. Technically the second, it just hasn't been published yet. Why are you not accepting the globe's claim of Coriolis drift? Because that's what's actually happening here. Rufy's questioning whether or not I accept something. Why is he concerned with what I accept? You seem very concerned with what I'm accepting there, Rufy. I don't care. Like now, I'm always reactionary to this shit. It's my language, not my show. I'm always reacting to this stuff, so I haven't given you a second thought until this moment. You've come up with my name coming out of your mouth. Let's make that plain, right? I'm asking the question now, Rufy, regardless of your concern with what I'm thinking or accepting. Why aren't you accepting the globe's claim of Coriolis effect? Now, if your answer to that is to explain that would be singular, on your own, isolated from the general public who believe in Coriolis effect, explanation for why you, Rufy, don't accept Coriolis effect, and that explanation happens to be about conservation of some nonsense that you like to talk about, just be under the understanding that you are not supported by the Western world who believe in Coriolis effect. In fact, you're bracing against it by asking me to accept something that isn't Coriolis effect, and in fact defies the globe's claim of Coriolis effect. So the question should be, why doesn't Ruhif accept the globe and its claims of Coriolis effect? You don't need to be asking me to accept anything, Rufy. Just answer that. Why don't you accept Coriolis drift? Because that's the globe claim here. And that's what's going to be made more and more clear with more and more of a wide smile as time progresses. And the show that I was going to plug, and I will now, that comes out on, I think it's Monday, on my second channel. I'll give it a catchy title. I've got a crap title for it at the moment. Something like Earth Debate 1579B, blah, blah, blah. Rubbish title. But I'll give it a snappy title that makes clear what's happening in there, which is I'm repositioning the argument from here forward. So it's the first time I've mentioned it. May have mentioned it on my own show. But this is the kind of public announcement. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of what QE's just done. I'm not having a go at QE. I'm sick of what I've got to accept about conservation of momentum. Right? Because who's claiming that? I'll tell you who's claiming it. A very small faction of people who disagree with the globe. They are delusional and believe that they've got the Western world behind them, and they're defending the globe when they put these sorts of questions to us about conservation of stuff. That's not a globe claim. Globe claims Coriolis effect. And any sane, reasonable person listening to this knows it. I don't suddenly vaguely ideas of conservation of linear or angular momentum. No. People know what the globe claims. It claims Coriolis effect. It's very plain. It's very simple. People all know that word. When I say Coriolis effect, most people associate it directly with the globe. But people like Ruhif, they don't believe the globe claims of Coriolis effect. And that is what I will be pointing out to them moving forward from here on in. Why are you asking me about this? Don't you believe in Coriolis effect? Yeah, me neither. But I can tell you why. And it seems so can you. You're not having the support you felt you had. And I now point this out. You haven't got the Western world behind you, Rufus. I think there's Coriolis effect. But you don't, do you, lad? Yeah, you're all alone in your little conservation of momentum. Maybe you can find a few citations from other anti-flat earthers who have published stuff online. How quaint. Meanwhile, the globe claims Coriolis effect, and you don't. I'm done.
Are you,
Nathan.
I like the stance. Brian, give me a sec, because I was about to introduce. This is something that we called globiolis a while back, and if what you're saying is nah, and in terms of what you said with regards to QA, because he's come up with when you accept conservation of momentum, and I know who he's going to say, angular, linear, yeah. And this is what I've criticised this for before, filling in their nonsense with a bit of intellect and make it a little bit at least sensical, so it says something at least, because that statement from Ruif doesn't actually say anything. It requires which sort of conservation of momentum you doofus. Yeah. But are you saying you've had enough now? Now, I'll tell you what, mate. No, I'm done. I'm done trying to help you out. Yeah. This is globiolis. Yeah. Which is the crap you've made up. Yeah. And no longer will we even humour that. We're going to ask you to defend your globe position. And like, try, obviously follow, but we spotted this a long time ago. We've done the FHS card for it, which highlights all these points. And I agree with you, because it is so obvious now, these symptoms that these people are exhibiting. I'm done.
Well, they
I'll be
name
very quick.
well they name. Hold on, Brian. Well, they name or phrase drop certain terms or phrases from physics that they think that that's it. They're good enough at that point. Well, what I like to do, and I understand what Nathan's doing. I got it. I mean, he's going to cut them right off at the knees right there. But I like to have a little fun with the conservation laws because I understand them, and I take them right where they want to go, where they don't know dick, and I'm going to show them how they're pretender clowns, the audience, right? Because they don't know what the conservation laws are. They have no clue. And the logical ends to those actual conservation laws is basically absurd, because if you go one route with one of those conservation laws, you got planes flying backwards, Roofy, you numpty from down under, because
This is the difference between the master and the student. So the student, that's me, this analogy, just wants to cut the opponent off at the knees, and they're just stumps bleeding on the battlefield, as far as I'm concerned, right? Kiwi's got a very different tact. He hasn't got a samurai sword, and he doesn't need one. What he has got is a rope that he can convince the person in front of him to tie around their neck and throw themselves off a cliff nearby.
That's good.
Far more satisfying.
Nathan, you're a dog, right? That will just put something out of his misery quickly. And clearly, QE's a cat that will just play with that poor wounded bird, let it keep crawling away, then just drag it back, make it suffer a bit more pain.
Now, just with this,
Horses for courses.
yeah, but it's just with this particular case. All other times, I agree, Nathan, it's the best way to go. Depends on what the case is, your audience, and where you're at. But the conservation laws, I love, because like I said, I understand them totally, and I get to play around. And you're right. You're right. I'm going to do that. I shouldn't do that, but I got to.
No, you definitely should. Oh, no. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. My logic isn't necessarily because I feel that you're wrong in repositioning the argument depending on the audience and the person you're opposing. I completely agree with you. And your methodology is better than mine because it has a more satisfying result. The humiliation and degradation at the hands of the person's own words is far more entertaining, if nothing else. Plus, it labours the point at the end when everyone gets the punchline, so the plane's flying backwards. Conservation, lads, right? What does that mean? It's conserving stuff. Well, that doesn't end well for you. But meanwhile, my point is that, the anti-flat earthers, up until this point, and I will reveal the psychological hand that I feel I'm playing when I do this, I feel that they've got the Western world behind them when they argue with us about conservation and momentum. Oh, hold on. Or the globe claims. Which is where I'll be stopping them, as I won't labour again now for a fourth time. But that takes away the fact that the perceived support they have from the Western world, who, in their mind, believe as they believe, that there's Coriolis effect. That's not what they're demanding we accept. They're demanding they accept their explanation for no drift being observed. Globe claims drift's going to be observed. That's where it's going to go from here on in. Why don't you have the, fortitude to accept what the globe claims? Why are you going against it? Why don't you like what the globe claims? Why don't you believe in the globe's claim of Coriolis drift like you're supposed to, subservient globe believer? Why have you taken it upon yourself to disbelieve the globe like I disbelieve the globe? Check it out. We've got something in common, haven't we, Rufy? We don't believe in Coriolis. You don't believe in it? Want to explain why you don't believe in it with conservation laws. And I don't believe in it because it doesn't happen. Both of us know Coriolis drift ain't happening. You're just willing to explain why it isn't happening. And I'm willing to now point out that, well, you don't believe in the globe's claim of drift. Then that's Coriolis effect, the one you're explaining why you haven't got any. Not a globe believer, Ruhif. Just have to accept that. You fell off a long time ago. Still think you're holding on by your fingernails to the top of that cliff edge? You're not. You don't believe in the globe either.
Oh, this is an old one because, and I'll get back to you, Brian. I know you're waiting in the wings and I rumpus you. But this is an old one. If you remember a long time ago, right around show 300, Rufy, the numpty from Down Under, came on to your show and thought he knew what the Coriolis effect was and got summarily crushed in less than 30 seconds and then ran away. So this is old, man. Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks, Kiwi. Hey, by the way. Hey, everybody.
Yep.
Hello, Brian.
No, I would read it very different, Nathan, what he's saying to you. Although you know this, I'm just going to point it out. What Ruhif is saying to you is, if I was to speak as Ruhif and to speak with honesty, what I'm saying to you as Ruhif is, please accept, Nathan, that I don't have an effect to show you. But I do have a claim, and I need you to accept the claim as my claim without me being able to show you any effect to support that claim. Or to even actualize the claim in any way.
Yeah, I haven't got an effect to show you, but I've got a reason why we haven't got an effect to show you. But it has a premise that you must accept. That the reason we're not seeing any effect is because things are spinning together. They're still spinning. There's no effect to show that. And it completely defies the globe's claim that we'll see drift to prove it. So, as stated about 6 times now, Ruhif doesn't believe in the globe's claims. He doesn't believe what the globe is peddling. He just doesn't believe them. He explains why there's no drift, no Coriolis effect, no 15 degrees an hour. Yeah, welcome to our side of this fence. Hopefully the dawning of this realization will come across the minds of many more than just Ruhif, as I go forth and explain that you don't believe in the globe's claim either then. Oh, wow, we've got more in common than we thought, eh?
Can I throw in a little silly caveat? Their claim about their globiolus claim concerning latitudes and different speeds at different latitudes, their claim is taken apart by the fact that planes don't follow latitude lines. Planes follow straight paths. Now, on their globe, that would be a curved path, an arc over their globe, but it still is not following the latitude line. So their claim concerning latitude lines, just as a caveat, is destroyed by their claim due to planes not following latitude lines. That might be a bit convoluted, what I'm saying there.
Sorry. What claim would that be, though? It's convoluted because what you're trying to position, and we've done this for the longest time, is reposition what the anti-flat earthers have repositioned in the original claim of Coriolis into Globiolus, and how we can undo their repositioning of the globe claim into Globiolus by its shortcomings. Then you have to overcome the shortcomings of Globiolus, point out how planes are going backwards, then reposition how they should be claiming there's Earth turning underneath to cause deflection at 15 degrees an hour, and how that which they aren't claiming but should be claiming if they're a globe believer is undone by the fact that flight times would be shortened. And that does seem like quite a lot to keep track of. Now, I can do that if I've got my, fully engaged brain going during a show. But for the average layman out there listening, they're going to go, so I've got to argue against how the conservation of momentum would cause planes to go fly backwards if you take them to the logical conclusion in their assertion, and then point out that that isn't the original globe claim of Coriolis drift at 15 degrees an hour as Earth spins beneath an inertial reference frame. And if I can get them to accept that they were wrong in Globiolus, they are then going to reassert their claim correctly, like the globe claims? Of course not. The only reason they're asserting Globiolus is because they know damn well that the drift claim that the globe makes fails. They're coming up with an explanation for why it fails. To cut all of that process out, the moment they start quizzing me about my reference frames, or about how I should be accepting conservation of momentum, I'll just ask, oh, so you don't believe in Coriolis effect on a globe either, then? Oh, that's cool. Nice, we've got something in common.
Shout out again.
You're all
hold on a second. Shout out again to Tony Wickham. With a super chat, he said, my best day was when NASA shut down a live feed when I commented on the bubbles rising in the camera view. Yeah, that would be outstanding if you did that. That must have been a long time ago. Oh, and he follows it up that he went back 15 minutes later and it was back up with a blurry and different image. Good one, Tony. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Well, I'll comment on that super chat. It was a super chat, or was it just a chat comment?
The first one was the super chat, and I followed it up with he just put the rest of the explanation in there about coming up with another image 10 minutes, 15 minutes later.
Okay, there was a time in the discussion. Was anybody else waiting to add anything to the discussion we just had before I comment on Tony Whittaker's super chat about bubbles in space?
Yeah, I was going to say something about begging the question.
Well, I knew there was something important. Yeah, I'm glad you go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can't quantify or qualify Coriolis without a non-inertial turning reference.
That's correct.
So,
What will you need to assert that Earth is a non-inertial turning reference frame? I mean, what kind of values might you need to ascribe in order to assert that, John?
Earth would have to have a radius, a measurable radius.
Oh dear, that's not good, is it? We debunked that.
You have to have three conditions for the Coriolis effect to exist. Number one, you have to have a non-inertial rotating reference frame. Number two, you also have to have an inertial reference frame. And number three, you have to have an object flying straight. Flying through, not attached. Say again?
4. You missed one. Wow, I can't believe this. You missed one. There's 4.
What?
You've got to have an inertial reference frame. You've got to have a non-inertial reference frame. You've got to have a projectile traveling through the inertial reference frame, and you've got to have an observer.
Oh, you have to have. Yeah, that's taken as read, though.
What? Because you didn't mention it?
Yes.
Fair enough.
I say milk it, Nathan.
So that's all. I know where I should be humble. I'll correct the audience so that they've got all the information. But it's an important prerequisite of the argument I currently make, which is the only reason it's prevalent. And yes, typically it would be taken as Red Q is not wrong. But because it's so fundamental to my current stance, that's why I'm focusing on it. with Wolfie 6020, guy claiming to be a pilot, and Answers in Genesis guy, I've forgotten his name, all three have fallen into the same bear trap, which is to assert that the effect, my prerequisite and reason for interrupting QE, the effect that you can only observe as you're on the non-inertial turning reference frame, observing something in the inertial reference frame. That's you on a roundabout spinning, looking at something. Dumb it down a little bit. You've got to be on the roundabout looking at something as you spin. You can't observe the effect if you're not on the roundabout spinning. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
The effect that you see is an illusion. It's not really happening. So the ball example is the most simplistic. You toss a ball over the roundabout. Two people standing either side of a roundabout are tossing a ball back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's going in a straight line. Now, if you were on the roundabout looking at the ball, it looks like it curves. Likewise, anything not on the roundabout looks like it's moving, shifting. You're turning, and the stuff around you looks like it's moving when it isn't. That's all Coriolis effect is. To have the effect, I get to my point, you've got to be on the roundabout spinning. So you can't account for that illusion that you see from a roundabout spinning on an aeroplane. Further to that, the illusion you see on a roundabout spinning doesn't affect anything ever. It's an illusion. It can't affect wind. It's the illusion observed as you turn beneath things. So while, and his name, Answers in Genesis, dude, the beard,
Danny Faulkner.
Pardon?
Danny Faulkner.
Danny Faulkner. Yeah, Danny Faulkner has asserted that, I can't quote him verbatim, but the Coriolis effect directly affects prevailing winds. Full stop. Not verbatim, but it's close enough. He's just wrong. He doesn't understand the effect. The effect's an illusion observed as you turn beneath things. Neither does Wolfie. He thinks his gadgets and gizmos account for drift. And neither did the pilot that came on the other day. Same principle. Thought that his gizmos and gadgets on a plane account for not actual deflection observed as you're turning on a roundabout. Just absurd. They don't understand the effect. The illusion of Coriolis effect. And when you assert that that illusion is going to cause anything to happen ever, you're just wrong and will be humiliated by me, as all three have recently found out. So that's the sum total of me wanting to interrupt. The fact that you must be on the roundabout looking at the thing happening. It's only observable from the roundabout, and it's only your eyes that are going to see it happening. And what's happening isn't really happening anyway. It's only happening because you're turning beneath something. Okay, I'm done. Sorry.
All right. So I must acquiesce at this point and say you are correct. So that has to be also identified. There are 4 things you need. So I acquiesce. You have to have a non-inertial rotating reference frame, an inertial reference frame, an object traveling through the inertial reference frame going straight, and the observer on the non-rotating rotating non-inertial reference frame. You are correct, Nathan. 4 prerequisites. Yes.
Okay, I'll try once more because I haven't forgotten what Tony had to say and I did want to address it. Has anybody else got anything to add on Coriolis? Because it's not at all subject matter related. We're still in the opening warm-up. This is far better than talking about food, but there is something pending from Tony.
Go ahead.
Any more?
I did want to say, first off, hello.
Oh, what's up, Chocolate?
Hello, Chocolate.
What's up, guys?
Yo, yo.
As far as the this whole Coriolis topic, I'll just add that my favorite part is when these guys will start to throw their own heliocentric priests that are running around the world teaching this stuff under the bus. And to me, I like pointing it out because it's like, if even if you're just a normie just watching it from the outside, you've got to say, well, these guys are running around teaching the world that, there's this effect that's observable that we can see. We could even measure it, do some calculations when you're watching it from your couch, right? When you're watching a football game, Mr. Smoking the Grass Tyson. But then these guys who decide to debate against it, for some reason, they're willing to throw those guys under the bus. So what's the problem? I thought they had this great unified idea of what's actually happening. It seems like they're not in coherence at all.
Well, the problem is that as they are throwing Neil deGrasse Tyson under the bus, right, his trajectory is deflected because of the deviation of this Earth's spin.
Okay, just credit where credit's due. Something's just dawned on me while Chocolate said that. while I'm making a big song and dance about me going forward from this point, this is actually all chocolate. It's only just dawned on me as he said that. So while I typically will go around the Wrekin and have done for many years, arguing about Globiolis and Coriolis and the differences and what they are and aren't accepting and the consequences and all the rest of it, the whole time, Chocolate's been saying what he's just said now, which is essentially what I'm saying. Why are you throwing Neil deGrasse Tyson under the bus is the exact same sentiment. It's why are you not believing what the globe's claiming? Neil deGrasse Tyson is just a personification of the globe's claim of Coriolis effect in that instance. That's all he is. He's just not personification, manifestation of the globe's claim of Coriolis drift. Now, when they're throwing Neil deGrasse Tyson under the bus, I'm slightly repositioning by going, no, you just don't believe what the globe claims, do you? Like me. You don't believe what the globe claims because it claims Coriolis effect, and you don't believe that. You are explaining why there isn't any with some story about Earth spinning and atmosphere spinning with it. That isn't the globe claim. They claim they drift apart at 15 degrees an hour. The drift that we observe is proving we spin. But you don't believe that, do you? No matter what story, you've got to beg the question of a different Earth that's spinning, because that isn't the globe that the general Western world believe in. Therefore, they're not behind you in this. Because they just think there's Coriolis effect. They may not know what it is either, and that's what you've lent on up until now. But they don't know what it is either, so they're technically behind you, because you're both saying globe a few times in the argument that they and you don't understand. But meanwhile, I'm going to be pointing out that actually you haven't got the Western world behind you. When you throw Neil deGrasse Tyson under the bus, it's just you throwing your belief in the globe under the bus.
Yep.
Because you don't believe the globe, do you?
Yep, that's very true. And I'd like to make a shameless plug, because the second half of the Coriolis effect argument is happening Tuesday on QE Live. So be here or be sphere. Is that it on Coriolis effect?
What Coriolis effect?
Well, Coriolis effect exists. It's just the Coriolis effect in relationship with the globe-tart.
Yeah, the one we ask about every day. The Earth-based? Nah, there's none of that.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact, they're telling us there's none of that.
Yeah, they're not expecting it.
Right, so can we do bubbles in space for Tony?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I object quite strongly to that positioning of that argument. And back in the day, it was IPS. Even went in front of a council to talk about this. And object to the idea and notion that there's bubbles in space and that we should all be talking about bubbles in space. And how the NASA feeds have got these clearly filmed in giant fish tanks representations of space when, why is the bubbles in them, etc., etc. That was the sentiment. Well, like rockets burning in space and how much fuel you'll use to get to the moon through space, those are arguments that lean on the idea, the begging the question fallacy of the second law of thermodynamics violation that is space in the premise. Not why are we under the misapprehension that there's a sky vacuum, we'd all be dead, the gas would fill it, that's absurd. It's why is the assumption that we've got a sky vacuum that we're all accepting got bubbles in it? It seemed like an argument that kept Narnia alive and arguing about whether or not the gas lamp would work. Why have we got a weird incandescent like bulbs like light coming from this lamp when it's supposed to be burning gas? It looks like a light bulb. So should we spend all day arguing about the gas lamp in Narnia that might not actually be running on gas? Hello, council. They say it's running on gas. We're paying for the gas bill. But it looks like an incandescent electric light bulb. So should we argue about this? Or should we point out that Narnia isn't real? Anyway, that was what I wanted to point out on that score with bubbles in space. Because what space? A second law of thermodynamics violation we definitely ain't got. We definitely haven't got bubbles in it, but that's pretty non sequitur when it comes to the fact we haven't got space to have bubbles in.
Space is fake.
Now, specifically, the vacuum of space is not only fake, it's a violation of second law. So be specific. Too general, you're going to get yourself in trouble.
I usually do say space as we've been taught is fake.
Say the vacuum of space, man, and be done with it.
The
Like outer
vacuum of
space.
fake.
Outer space means the sky vacuum, but generally when I say outer space, I think that's what people mean. But although technically, NASA define pop quiz, everyone. Where does space begin?
Kármán line. Not yeah, but not with. I don't know if. Hold on a second. I don't.
Next.
My television screen.
Hold on a
At your
second.
feet.
Hold on a second. The United States doesn't they don't recognize the Kármán line. So go ahead, Nathan.
You just said the Kármán line, so because I've immediately gone wrong, correcting himself. I love it. Okay.
At your feet.
It starts at sea level.
Yeah, it would. But you got to be real careful. If we want to be exact, there are definitions for different levels of vacuum. We could do that, but everyone knows what we're talking about in general.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about Narnia and the definitions of a vacuum in terms of where you put the super vacuum, super extra vacuum, super magical, marvelous vacuum. The scale that I assign to it doesn't really matter. Weak vacuum, very weak vacuum, very, very slightly insignificant, but not quite almost.
That's it. You're just making that up. Let me find it.
What I'm saying is, it's arbitrary, isn't it? Where I put something on the scale,
It is.
or the scale itself. ESI, Tor, what difference does it make? Who cares?
Well, if you want to be specific with their argument, because we're using their argument against them, so here it is. I'll throw it up there, right there. 1 second. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Ah! Is that too big? No, that looks good. So there you go. Those are the vacuum levels described. So you have atmospheric pressure at 760 torr. I'll just go down the list. A low vacuum is 760 to 25 torr. A medium vacuum is 25 to 1 times 10 to the negative third torr. High vacuum is 10 to the negative third or 10 to 10 to the negative 9th torr. Ultra high, 10 to the negative 9th to 10 to the negative 12th. Extremely high, 10 to the negative 12th, and then outer space, officially. Good?
Okay. But well, not really, because I think when you got to very high vacuum, started at 10 to the minus 9. Is that correct? Did I listen along?
Ultra high starts at 10 to the minus 9.
Ultra, sorry. I remembered better. Ultra high is beyond our experience of vacuums, though, isn't it?
It's above where the alleged ISS is.
No. What's the highest vacuum we've ever produced?
10 to the negative
Yeah.
6.
Right. So maybe it's the one step down then. That step, ultra high, certainly, is not something anybody's ever experienced. Ever.
Yep. All right.
What's the next step down?
Second.
What's the next step down? I'm highlighting how arbitrary it is.
Oh yeah,
You know,
it's just a convention, but we're using their own convention against them to define it. We got to get their story straight before we pummel it, right?
No, I agree. You've got to understand the story inside out. I think I do, though. I mean, I do. Although I don't think you're suggesting I don't.
Nope.
When it comes to the arbitrary scales that you assign to stuff, I prefer Tor. And in this description, when it comes to an ultra high vacuum, you qualify immediately with the Tor value, don't you?
Yes.
Right. So it's just Tor.
Well, it's all in Tor, right? But it's Mox Nix. We just have to identify what.
John,
What?
I thought Dathan's point was brilliant. I had to look it up. What the NASA chamber was is 4 times 10. I know you knew it off the top of your head, but it's really important that 4 times 10 to the minus 6. So a high vacuum, the best we can achieve if we build an underground bunker, right? 4 times 10 to the minus 6. That sits in the high, in the middle of the high, smack bang in the middle.
Yep.
Yeah? Look at the rest of it. And high vacuum sits in the middle of the scale. Look at what they're claiming. The best we can achieve with a concrete bunker and containment is that. Yet, apparently, where the ISS sits, that's really important. To
that's where
understand
the
those
portal
numbers,
is.
those magnitudes. Yeah, the magnitudes of difference. It's not the 4 I'm interested in. It's the power of the 6, the 7,
Yeah.
the 8, the 9. Now I'm into ultra high, the 10. Yeah, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because there's a part in that list where you go from the reality to Narnia, basically. They just add a bunch. Oh, let's add a bunch of other numbers that are not achievable by us by any means. But yeah, we could think about it like they were.
Yeah, but the important part of that is this should be in the context of nature, not man-made vacuums. What is the highest vacuum that nature can afford us? That's the question.
That's hilarious.
Nature abhors a vacuum, but I mean, there are certain capillary motions and stuff that you can describe as vacuum-like, but they're few and far between.
Yeah, but nowhere
mean-
near these levels.
It's very,
nature-
very miniature amounts of vacuum.
They're pressure changes.
Like-
Nature. The phrase "nature abhors a vacuum" is there is nothing in nature that you can use in the natural world to demonstrate a vacuum.
Yep.
Certainly not even to half the level of your NASA chamber. It doesn't occur in nature. Entropy rules. Those pressure differentials will not be allowed in nature. This stuff isn't structurally strong enough in nature, other than rocks, caves, mountains. But how you would evacuate a mountain to create that, doesn't occur in nature, does it? Evacuating a mountain. So
Entropy rules. I like that.
hence the phrase. It's not born out of just a jovial phrase. It's born out of knowledge and experience. Nature abhors a vacuum. It will not allow it.
Well, it'll allow some differential, but not that extreme, right? So what they've done with this graph is basically create a giant extended idea of a gradient and just expand it on with an asymptote forever, right? That's what they've tried to conjure up. That's how they designed it. And it's
Correct.
fantastical. And in reality, the differential is never that far apart within one container.
Hey, I'm going to have to
including
stop
the
you
Earth.
guys. I'm going to have to stop you for a second before I get well behind with the Super Chat, so just chill for a second. Unitox Femu, at the best, you only debunk the radius. Yeah, I seem to have heard that somewhere. Tony Wickham, I'm just saying swimming pool. Nathan is on point, though. And then, thanks, Tony. And then Unitox Femu again, space begins where atmosphere, which is a contradiction in terms, that's my addition, stop to rotate. Yeah, I know what you're saying there. Thanks, guys, for the Super Chats. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, swimming pool. I totally agree with the sentiment. And in that regard, it's a good point. What you're showing, if you can make the point as concisely as that, is that what you're told is outer space. Okay, well, that's the natural conclusion to this conversation, actually, Tony. So well done. What is it then? What are we being shown? Well, it's all fake. It's green screen, it's trapeze, a high wire, it's men in swimming pools. That's what you're actually watching. So that's where the natural conclusion comes in. If people ask, well, what is it then? We don't know. I don't know what the sky is. What I do know is that to have gas pressure here, we need to be under containment. Now, they've taken that antecedent consequent relationship, flipped it on its head, because it's the worst aspect of the heliocentric model. In fact, it's stuck out as number one proof against the globe for a number of years. Housekeeping question, best thing you can start off as your opener if you want to introduce someone to this subject to this day. Staring up at the sky and say, you reckon that's a vacuum? That's a good opener because of natural law and how gas behaves. To flip it on its head, as Arwin's just described, and say, well, a delta of having pressure and dynamic systems means a gradient. You just follow that gradient up to nothing, and we've got a sky vacuum. Overcomes the antecedent consequent quite nicely with a delta of the thing that we're actually in quite stark violation of, which is needing containment for the gas we're breathing.
Right, they falsely claim that the gradient can be that far apart within a single container. And that's not provable.
Right, and to withstand the mere pressure at sea level, 0.9 or whatever it is, that level of pressure can be combated with what, 4-foot thick walls to achieve 10 to the -6 torr. So you're saying that the gas is so immense in terms of the amount of pressure it puts on the walls of the container that you're creating the vacuum in. They've got to be immensely thick, buried completely, whatever, just to stop the gas, which is desperately trying to get in under 14.7 psi. But if you go up high, and then we've got the same thing as we've had to have massive walls creating, and yeah, it just hangs around above the Kármán line. Dry vacuum, yeah. Why not?
It seems almost the opposite, right? Look at the size of the walls of this vacuum chamber here, right? But it gets higher, and what do the astronauts tell us? Oh, the shells of these spacecraft were as thick as like aluminum foil, couple centimeters of aluminum foil. This is what they tell us. We have to be careful to not poke holes through the ship. Like, that would be my normie question. If this is the type of level that we could achieve here on Earth, how are you testing this equipment and these suits that people are supposed to be in when the vacuum is so much greater up there than it is down here?
And there it is. Chocolate falls straight into the trap. My criticism of Tony. Now we're on to discussing about how pressurized suits that are used for spacewalks would be tested to withstand the space that we're now going to be talking about being real. I know Chocolate's not actually doing that, but I've got to highlight that. Like, it'll be the thorn in my panel's side forever, in the same way as John will be the thorn in my side whenever I start babbling on about Coriolis. And then he says, you're going to need an R value for that.
I've got to defend Chocolate, Dave. He's doing exactly what I did with the scale. He's saying, look at the scale, look at where you could possibly test it underground with NASA. Are you saying that piece of shit scale where you can go to 10 to the -6 is going to be valid in these exceedingly scales of magnitude that you claim this crazy place is in? What is the point in testing it there? Yeah,
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, he's not joining in their analogy. He's saying, look at the bullshit that you're presenting as justification as to why you can travel in this place that can't exist.
Exactly.
All right,
Don't get me wrong.
understand.
Sometimes I like to dance around in their nonsense, because it's this dancing around in their nonsense that brought me here. So
I just picture you dancing around, Chocolate.
in nonsense.
The trouble is, right, we've learned so many special moves. And I mean that, I'm using a computer game analogy. They're not special moves. They're just the realities of the contradictions that they present us as evidence. That we can choose whichever. I can do an uppercut. I can Sorayuken them. Yeah? I can dragon uppercut. It doesn't matter what I do. There's so many options to batter them, because basically what they're presenting is false and contradicting by their own supposed truth.
Shoryuken.
All right. All right. Do we want to
second.
transition to the actual subject material?
Just about to, but I've got
I
rumpus.
was going to ask, are we doing science today?
Oh, God. Further and further from my beautiful segue. Yes, and often this nonsense about sky vacuum gets labelled as science. That was epic, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, round of applause.
It's excellent. And we're going to get right into it. And we're going to dive into independent variables. And if you guys didn't know it, if you weren't around at that time, when I first came out here, that's was the name that the anti-flat earthers at that time gave me. Independent variable John. I wore it proudly because I knew. Now they stopped doing it, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years after, maybe in 2018, 2019, they stopped doing that because they finally figured out we better not say that anymore because it's your ass. Because they were using it condescendingly, right? And they just expose themselves. So as a continuation of last week's or the previous week, 2 weeks ago, presentation. We're going to dive into independent variables starting off the bat here. Now there's going to be some crossover and stuff. Did somebody want to say something? No,
I was going to make a snarky comment, but I'll forgo it because we're actually into the presentation now.
Yeah, you could do that. It'll just echo through the YouTube display. But that's okay. Yeah, we're going to head into independent variables. Like I said, they're a key component of scientific hypotheses. It appears, and I remember when I came out in 2016 and talking about science and the scientific method and experiments, and I brought this subject up, it was like it was foreign to them. So right away, you know that they're pretended clowns. I couldn't believe it. I was a bit naive, I have to admit, because I just assumed everyone already knew this. I never had any citations like this. I didn't have them, to be honest with you, because I just assumed, because this is self-evident to anyone that's not even a freshman university in any natural science course. I mean, you learn this stuff in high school, essentially, and most of it in grade school, but you don't remember that stuff. You're too busy playing recess. Or playing at recess. But like I said, I didn't have any of these citations. I didn't think I needed them. It was like, well, duh. But now I can't understand. I can't relate to somebody that would come up against me in natural science. They must be sadomasochists or something. I don't get it. I mean, this is well, duh. If you pull anyone that knows what they're talking about out of academia, they're going to confirm everything I say. I digress. So, independent variables. Here we go. From Penn State University. Oh, I forgot. They say that this is grade school. What grade school is Penn State University from? I don't know. Independent variable. It is what is varied during the experiment. It is what the investigator thinks will affect the dependent variable. Very simply, right? From Colorado State, the other grade school, independent manipulated variable. Variable changed by the scientists. They're hyper specific here. It's what the investigator is testing. That's interesting. Another elementary school, the University of North Carolina. In an experiment, the independent variable is the variable that is varied or manipulated by the researcher. That's the same thing that Colorado State said. Changed by the scientist, varied or manipulated by the researcher. They must be in cahoots or something. And the dependent variable is the response that is measured. An independent variable is the presumed cause, whereas the dependent variable is the presumed effect. The IV is the antecedent, whereas the DV is the consequent. So we'll go to practicalphysics.org, that elementary school, otherwise known as the Institute of Physics. Independent variable, the variable that is, deliberately changed by the experimenter. See, they're getting more hyper-focused on exactly the tenets of what an independent variable are. How you like that, Nathan? Tenets?
Love it.
Yeah. Let's go to the next elementary school. USC, University of Southern California Elementary School. Independent variable. The variable that is stable and unaffected by other variables you're trying to measure. It refers to condition of an experiment that is, systematically manipulated by the researcher. So deliberately and then systematically manipulated by the researcher. It is the presumed cause. They could have used a better word with this. They should have put supposed, but we're not gonna get all our panties in a bunch over that for right now. So remember, viable independent variables must satisfy 3 criterion, not just one, all 3. Number 1, it's your supposed cause. Number 2, the researcher must be able to vary and manipulate it, like it logically follows from all the references and citations I just read out. I just didn't make that up. And number 3, the independent variable must demonstrably exist before you use it in an experiment. I consider that, again, self-evident. You can't use something that doesn't exist in an experiment. I have to emphasize that in the times that we're in. All 3 criterion, like I said, must be satisfied, not just one. Let's take a look at some of them that are proposed to us by anti-flat earthers. So we got height and depth, we got width, length, distances, and our favorite, time, right? We're always told they'll find a citation from some numpty that says time is always an independent variable. Really? Demonstrate it. That's where it circles the drain because you're done. These are not independent variables, folks. Can't be. Let's check a couple out. Number 1, the submarine was crushed at a depth of 10,000 feet. Did depth cause the sub to implode, or was it pressure? Number 2, the gentleman was so obese he measured 1 meter wide. Did width cause obesity, or was it laziness combined with excessive caloric intake? Number 3, over the course of the night, the sun suddenly appeared above the horizon. Did time cause the sun to appear above the horizon? Does time cause the difference of scores between the first and third quarters? That's all I have to do. It's already over, right? You see how silly these are, right? This is elementary school stuff, guys. Uh-oh, I heard somebody come off mute. What's the problem?
Point 2. Point 2. It's not that.
Point
It's
2?
my hormones. Yeah, it's just my hormones.
It's just your horn. Oh, I got you. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate that little addition. All right, null hypothesis. From the next elementary school, California State University in Northridge, to do a hypothesis test. That's an experiment, by the way. You see the brackets there? That's my addition. When you see brackets, that's my addition to help explain the previous phrase or term. If this had parentheses on it, then it would be part of the citation of theirs, like this one down here. But I digress. To do a hypothesis test, you will actually have 2 hypotheses. The null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis, which are stated in such a way that they are mutually exclusive. You can't have both hypotheses be true. That's what mutually exclusive means. The null hypothesis is the conclusion that is considered the default. You will accept this hypothesis if you fail to find sufficient support for the alternative hypothesis. The null hypothesis definition. The null means 0, by the way, if you didn't know that. The zero difference or no difference hypothesis predicts that changing one variable, shockingly, the independent variable, will have no effect on the variable being measured, the dependent variable. I know Nathan wants me to stop here, so I will. What do you got?
What have I got? I hadn't got anything up my sleeve.
Did I presume?
Well, it was actually by coincidence when you said that you thought I was going to interrupt because I was. It's about the snarky comment in regards to independent variable John. Well, the snarky comment, although I can't say it in the same context, it was basically along the lines of they're criticizing you for wanting to know or pointing out the cause in a cause and effect relationship. So it's like saying, John, you want to know the cause?
That's literally the same thing I was thinking. I was laughing at it. Like, think about it. These are the guys that are running around telling everybody we've got all this science for the globe. And then this guy comes around and starts asking about an independent variable, and you make fun of him for that?
Yeah.
Right. Because they turn the what causes into a what is option.
Yep. Yep. We're going to get into some of that here in a few seconds. Go ahead.
Just the null is often assumed to have no inference. If we've got a decent, correct experiment, a null will prove something to us. In our quest, it often, from a science point of view, it doesn't necessarily prove a great deal, but it does rule stuff out. That's the important. The null is often used elsewhere in humanities and stuff. I know. Yeah.
Yes. In statistical research, it's also used. Yes.
Yeah, to infer something.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, John, in a scientific experiment, what does the null infer fundamentally?
Are you asking me a question?
Doesn't infer anything. It's another. It's another suppositional statement.
Well, what does it prove?
Yeah, you don't. And this is this is important subject. I was going to bring this up before I shifted over to Nathan. The null hypothesis is never tested directly.
No, I think I follow what Adam's driving at here. Right?
Okay, got
it. Essentially, the null can be taken later on when Adam says it's used in other areas. What he means is sometimes the zero difference result, i.e., you didn't prove the cause of your effect, is held up like it's a proof of something, and it's a lack of proof of something or a ruling out of something, drawing a line through something rather than under it. That's all it is. But it's critical, the null, because it's part of the process that gives you empiricism. However, back to what Arwin said a second ago, it's almost a change of tone. You can't do this on paper, but this is essentially what they've done. Ignore the null completely when you're claiming your science. You take what is a suppositional statement, if A then B, and just turn it into a story that you claim is true. If A, then B. Yeah, there's a change in tone rather than if A then B, as if I check that A does actually cause B, contrasted with when I check if I vary A, it may not cause B. That's your null. That's a properly formulated hypothesis. If you just, like I say, ignore the null completely, and then rather than doing anything, just take the hypothesis in the alternative, that's if A then B, as an explanation.
I love you both. Really, that is the best explanation for hopefully what the point I'm trying to make is. Yes, Nathan, in science. Yes, John. Yeah, we never directly test the null. Therefore, in science, we could never draw any inference from the null. In the humanities, when people are accepting.
Sorry,
just finish the point. Just finish the point because there are nuances. I know. But I'm trying to just highlight the differences. But within the humanities, that null, we will draw conclusions from. Yeah, in a fundamental way in terms of our theology, our theory of stuff. We don't do that in science. All it does is enable us to rule stuff out. Yeah, constructually. Yeah, in terms of we've gone to all this effort to set up an experiment, which in science has a benefit. But in the humanities, we don't want to waste that because it's a humanity. But there's a lot of data there because we're not dealing with cause and effect. We've got a lot of data. We want to use that data in a correlative way, which is the same way they use the actual hypothesis in a correlative way. And that was just the because you see it bandied about and people use it and try to give extra benefit to the null. And it has real benefit in the humanities, but in science, it's something that helps us progress and in a way of ruling out stuff. It doesn't necessarily elucidate great understanding because the purpose of it being there is to define that cause and effect. If we weren't, the null is a disappointment, I think is the way of putting it simply. Yeah,
it's the well, it wasn't that then result.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that an integral part of step 2?
Yeah, and that's why what I was about to go on and where I was trying to interrupt Adam earlier. I'm sorry, Adam. Yes, it's a disappointment. If you understand what it is, it's vital and critical and very important to offer the empiricism. But if you get a zero difference result, that's exactly that. You didn't see the effect. You got zero difference. You varied your suppositional cause, and it didn't cause it. So it's well, when people hijack the method, and that's what we're really talking about, people use this empirical method to lend credence to their just so stories. They are going to see where the blade has sharp edges, and the null has equally as sharp of an edge as the alternative, and I'll tell you why. It's because it's the other side of the coin of empiricism, which is to say that when QE sometimes explains this, he says, well, people who say that you're not proving anything with this, well, if you disprove your presumed cause, i.e. it didn't cause the effect, you've proved it didn't cause something. That can be taken and used also as a very sharp tool.
Exactly.
So we have proven something then. Oh, well, I can use that in my 100 just so stories when I talk about how this null in a probably quasi experiment that isn't really establishing cause and effect of anything natural. But if I want to claim that it failed and it got its zero different result, no, positive spin, that could be used very effectively as a sharp tool of proving something, couldn't it? That's precisely what they do when they utilize the null to their ends. But in reality, it's just damn, it wasn't that then. I thought it was A, I varied A, it didn't cause B, so I got a zero difference result, a null. I validated, proved that didn't cause it. It's like, bummer. What you really want to be doing and what you're directly testing, which was John's point, is the alternative. You only test the alternative. Testing to see if what you think causes the effect does actually cause it or not. And if not, you validate the null. You prove the null, which is I vary my, I think this is going to cause, and bummer, it didn't cause it. That's the null being validated.
Yep.
But what I was saying is step 2 is to make to formulate your hypothesis with the educated guess, right? Well, that's part of the educated guess. So it's vital to the scientific method in that respect as well.
Absolutely vital. That is the bit I admire the most in the people that actually do science, real science. The dude that comes up with the cause of the effect is the guy that has supposed what causes the effect. I mean, that therein lies the genius. Now, every time I brought this up before, so I'll preempt what QE typically says, which is no, there's been a long road of a lot of research and a lot of discovery to get to the point where they've got a pretty good idea what they think causes the effect when they suppose it and formulate it into a hypothesis with a null to go forth to vary it to see if it does cause it. There's a good chance it will by the stage they've got to. It's not just one guy going, I wonder if it's this. Let's try it. Aha, I was right. But that's how I view it. It's that is the genius of science if I reify it. And there's no other way than to position it with an actual guy coming up with the, I think it's this bit. And in reality, that's just the genius of the method. But by saying that, I'm reifying the method into an entity that it isn't. It's just a method.
The early medals were won like that, though, weren't they? Yeah? You know what I mean? But we're now at a stage where we can use science in quantum mechanics. And so we have to come up with and this is the skill, coming up with a viable experiment now, that will really fundamentally test your hypothesis. That requires all the research, all the knowledge, all the understanding, to be able to do that. That's where sometimes I say abductive, but sometimes it's not abductive. Sometimes it's just bloody hard work, you know?
Yeah.
Einstein's got one of those medals, as you put it, though, hasn't he? For actual scientific discovery.
No.
Ooh.
No. The photoelectric effect was not an experiment.
Was it not?
Nope.
Observation, demonstration.
I'm corrected.
It's just a demonstration of what is. It's very easy, right? Because we all been Jedi mind tricked. Go ahead.
Losing the title, photoelectric effect.
Yes.
Should have really thought about that before I opened my mouth.
Yeah. That's a good one. I didn't realize that, but yes.
Well, why is the Sagnac experiment called the Sagnac experiment?
Oh,
then?
brother.
Well, I actually have a question.
Cavendish.
Go ahead, John.
From the time that wave function collapse was discovered until the time that the delayed choice quantum eraser proved the cause, how long was that time span, and how many suppositions were put forward that failed?
It was decades, and it was mainly thought experiments because they didn't have the technical expertise to bring those experiments to fruition. A lot of those thought experiments, they're thought experiments, but they kind of knew already. I don't know how they did, but most of them came from Professor John Wheeler at Princeton through the years. So it was a long time.
Okay, whoever asked the question, why is the Sagnac experiment called the experiment? Can you ask your question? It got shouted down, but I want to answer it.
That was me being flippant, Nathan. I said,
It's
so
not
why
flippant.
is the Sagnac experiment called the Sagnac experiment?
Well, I'm glad you ask. The reason the Sagnac experiment and the Cavendish experiment, as someone else dropped that one into, are called experiments is because that is the essence of the greasing of the skids that is the hijacking of the real science and its vernacular. So calling something that is actually pseudoscience, quasi-experiments, apparatus, without phenomena, an experiment lends credence to the idea that what you're offering at the end of that parlor trick is actually scientific validity. That is why they call it an experiment when it isn't. And that is why UE is known as independent variable John. Because when somebody offers up a quote-unquote experiment, the test to see whether or not it is actually a hijacking of the vernacular, as I've just stated, or a valid cause and effect relationship with an independent variable, the thing he's going to be asking for when they claim there's an experiment in play. Well, what was the independent variable? That would be to say, what was the presumed cause of the effect that's being detailed? Now, 99 times out of 100, they don't know which way round it is, which one's the effect, which one's the cause. So that's why he's got that nickname. Still back in Timeline and Harp's play as we go back to the pink writing, and QE tying them down very importantly did this with the people who were listening at the time to understand why the opponent will reposition something they're claiming is an effect in nature, the presumed cause that presumably doesn't exist, hasn't been shown to exist, can't be varied, only exists in whatever. The independent variable is the key to science. What causes the effect?
Wasn't that a lot of fun? I kind of miss those days.
Well, you said it earlier. The people who came back at you with independent variable John, and I sarcastically said, "Oh right, you want the cause of the effect? Like what use is that?" Yeah. After a time, they started to figure out that that was the most stupid thing they could possibly say. About now, to compare and contrast, they're doing the same with refraction. Hey, check it out, Rufy! You've got two mentions in one show. Right, 2 years of them barking refraction at us and us going, that's the worst thing you could say. It destroys your geometry, you fool. What do you mean you've got no straight lines? Your whole religion's based on it. Refraction. I win. Okay, you don't. It destroys your geometry. That's the end of your argument if you claim refraction. What kind of an idiot are you? I'm not an idiot at all. Refraction. All right, okay. Well, you should just keep saying that, and I'll just keep pointing out that that destroys your religion. Right up until the moment that people like Ruf come along and start drawing straight lines to geometric horizons. You go, oh, what's happened? 2 years, not enough time for you to have it sink in that everyone around you's been barking refraction? Really? What gives? You need a straight line down now, do you? Down under? How priceless.
Yeah.
Probably best if you don't bark refraction at us anymore, eh? How many people have barked refraction to us
Oh,
since the
God.
elevation argument?
They're still doing it.
It's Dave. something just like, as we were saying that with regards to Sagnac experiment, and there's a kind of ranking that's given to these things. So for some reason, it's given the title experiment, even though how you quantify it and such, and even how you could draw a logical inference to reality from it is very dubious. Yeah, can't say it does this in any terms of reality. The Sagnac experiment. You've got the photoelectric effect, which does imply things from logical inference. The point I wanted to bring in was something I often bring up, which people hate, which is Aries failure, which could be in the Elizabethan way described as their experiment. What's interesting to me is described as Aries failure. Reason being, keep it as an experiment to measure the ether, but ignore the logical inference. And it's the logical inference of Einstein's work that gives us that. Yeah, but there's the logical inference in that they hide, and hence it's labelled Aries failure in the mainstream. And so that the titles that things are given are very interesting, that far exceed any scientific validity that's contained within them. Yet they still maintain that through history, those titles. It's often what's it called in a tell in poker.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question. What did it fail to do?
It failed to demonstrate the movement of the luminiscer. I can't do it. Luminiscer. I can't do it. The ether.
The ether. I sound like Foster Brooks.
It was an ether drag test.
Yeah.
All right.
That's what it failed to do.
All right.
What
I just want
biological inference did it demonstrate is the point.
I want to caveat this by saying, listen, hold on. I'm echoing through somebody. It's aggravating. So I just want to say that we're not making fun of Sagnac. We're just saying it's not a scientific experiment. That's all we're saying. We're not laughing at the Sagnac effect at all. Got it? I hope that comes through loud and clear. Tony Whitcomb, shout out. Again, sorry, sir, it's been a while. I laugh calmly when I talk to people who believe in nonsense and absolutely lose it mentally in front of me. We all have had that experience. Yes, we have. I have it every day with people. But go on, folks. I'm sorry I stopped at this null hypothesis.
Sagnac.
Yeah, I'll reiterate that. I'll second that. We're not making fun of the Sagnac poopy pants experiment. It's very serious stuff.
Poopy pants.
No, but if you use scientific method and you look at what I just described, for it to be given the title experiment, what? There's less quantifiable reality in the Sagnac experiment than there certainly is in Aries failure, unless you're presupposing a reality. But if you just look at the data, yeah, you can't do much with the Sagnac experiment, but you can draw a lot of inference to reality from Aries failure. And in the middle is the photoelectric effect, which sits way and above in terms of any validity above the Sagnac effect in terms of our comprehensions of reality with all the understanding and knowledge of science we have. Yeah, it's that ranking that they're given that kind of grates it. What grinds my gears in terms of when it cropped up, it's just that complete juxtaposition of where they actually should sit in terms of the titles they're given. I'm done rambling.
Okay, we good? Everyone's got it out of their system. I'm not stopping again, by the way.
Yeah, I'm definitely done then.
Yeah. All right. All right. Like I said, I'll just reiterate, the alternative and the null hypothesis are stated in such a way that they are mutually exclusive. That is, they both can't be true. That's what it means. Let's give an example, like a working example. That always helps people. So, observe a natural phenomena. Healthy type 1 diabetics suffer from diabetic ketoacidosis, that's DKA, apparently from the absence of adequate insulin on board. So, let's make an alternative hypothesis here. Given otherwise healthy type 1 diabetes patients, the lack of insulin will will lead to diabetic ketoacidosis. So then you ask yourself, then what would be the null? Well, it's the zero difference. It's the same thing, only nullified, right? Makes perfect sense. Given otherwise healthy type 1 diabetes patients, the lack of insulin will not. That is, it nullifies the alternative or the will, right? It will not lead to diabetic ketoacidosis. It's just that simple. It's the mirror image, right?
Can I interrupt?
Oh, here we go.
This is, to me, quite a good way of exemplifying what the null is.
Well, thank you. I thought so too.
Yeah, I mean, just to exemplify, it's the complete opposite of a lack. It's just normal in this case, like normal insulin levels. Nothing changing. Yeah, not messing around, increasing it, dropping it, etc. I know I'm kind of stating the obvious, John. But to me, that point's important. It's about,
it is.
The natural hemostasis is there. Now, I'm going to tweak it. If I drop it, yeah, not if there's no insulin not ever existing in the world or whatever, but within this hemostasis system that's going, if I vary this and doing this, and the null here is very specific to me. It actually has a real significance.
Yep.
It doesn't mean nothing. Do you get my point? That's why I interrupted. It has a significance.
Yeah, that's true. I see the angle you're coming at it. Yes, you're correct. In this particular instance, yes. So the dependent variable. Who else? Okay. Dependent variable, the effect. Unbelievable. You done?
Let me just try and check. He is actually, because we can't see it in Discord, he is actually in the middle of an actual presentation. I thought that was subtle when he started again, but clearly it isn't subtle enough. Too subtle, rather. So pop yourselves on mute. Just let him get to the end of the presentation. He'll hint when he's done.
The dependent variable in the above, that's the effect or prediction, diabetic ketoacidosis, and the independent variable, obviously, the cause is the insulin or lack thereof. This is usually, I like this visual. I seen this in a dream, and I wanted to put this up because maybe it will maybe clarify a few things, the difference between a hypothesis, a null, and an experiment, all in one swoop. So the alternative hypothesis is the independent variable, that's the cause, plus the dependent variable, the effect. It's a prediction of cause and effect, simply. The null is the independent variable, the cause, the dependent variable, the effect, same thing as the above, equals the prediction of not cause and effect. There's no difference. There's zero difference. Follow? Now, the experiment takes it one step further because you're going to actualize the alternative. Remember, we don't ever directly test the null. You always test the alternative. What it does, it just adds one more little step. The experiment is the independent variable, the cause, the dependent variable, the effect, plus your constant or controls equals prediction of cause and effect. Hopefully that will clarify any confusion because I don't think I've put it together before. What a alternative hypothesis and experiment look like together. So hopefully that clears a lot of things up. It's just that the experiment is the actualization of the alternative with one additional step or addition. Good? Hopefully. The entire goal of the scientific method is to elucidate and reveal cause and effect relationships. That's it. That's all it's designed to do. If you ask another question besides a natural cause and effect relation, it doesn't mean that that question's non sequitur. It just means that it's not a part of natural science. That's it. That is, the explanation is by demonstration of the hows and the whys, not describing the what's and the is. Like I said, let's take a look at a couple examples here. Some that if you pull an actual scientist off the street, they could be Jedi mind tricked into thinking that these are actual natural science. And they sound sciencey, but they're not. And it emphasizes my point above. So is identifying a mitochondria or a Golgi apparatus in eukaryotes, is that science? Is that natural science? It's not friggin' science, right? Because you're identifying the existence or the what and the is of something. That's not cause and effect. Simply. Identifying the spin of an electron, is that science? Not friggin' science. There's no cause and effect here. Categorizing, this is a belly laughing joke, categorizing organisms in the taxonomic classification system, right? It's not friggin' science. It just isn't. So I took 2 from biology, the first one and the last one, and 1 from physics, or what's called physics, right? Not science. They may be a part of scientists' vernacular, but actually inherently within themselves, there's no science here whatsoever. In fact, it's non sequitur. These are all non sequitur to natural science. Not that they're not important. Not that there might be true or not true. It doesn't have anything to do with the topic, right? They're just not natural science, period. End of story. And there's another one that's not natural science. I'm gonna stay here for a little while. Mathematics isn't science or physics. Much like a tape measure isn't carpentry. One of the main reasons is that they're kind of different words. That should give the game away right there. Some people have a difficult time with this. And let me just take the Louisville Slugger to it. I'm going to have this. I'm wishing Baltards. No, I'm not. Baltards don't have to look at this. It's flat earthers and everyone watching this presentation. Listen to the next 3 statements I'm going to give you concerning mathematics and science. You ready? We got some big britches here. By the way, this isn't your average Joe off the street. Listen closely. From Richard Feynman, Nobel laureate from the Feynman Lectures on Physics. Mathematics is not a science from our point of view, in the sense that it is not a natural science. The test of its validity is not experiment. So there's 2 profound thoughts that come out of here. Number 1, mathematics isn't natural science. Duh. And number 2, he's telling you implicitly what is natural science. Well, according to Richard Feynman, who they worship, by the way, according to Richard Feynman, natural science is one that has a test of validity. That's experiment. You see, this is a profound statement, right? I love this. And you're not going to be able to delete Feynman's lectures. Best of luck to you. From Dr. Carey Mullis, Nobel laureate, another one, and mathematics, which is really not science. Let's break it down one more time. Well, maybe a couple more times. From Professor Balakrishnan, ITT Madras. He comes right out and just says it plainly. That's the whole point about physics. It's not mathematics. Take this in. Let this burn into your retina. Now, the anti-flat earthers, what do they say? Mathematics is science, right? Because they're not parroting what their pseudoscience priests are telling them. Right? They're not doing it. Because I don't know if I can get any more clear with this. I don't know if that's possible. If you don't get this, if you don't understand this, then you have serious literacy problems. This is just plain language, folks. From Professor Shankar, Chair of Physics at Yale. Quantum mechanics, it's a theory which is based on experiment. It's not deduced by mathematics. You see what he did here? He juxtaposed experiment, which is science, with mathematics. You see that subtlety there? Maths don't prove reality. For example, 1 apple minus 6 apples is -5 apples. Anthony stole this off me years ago. He pirated it right from under me. And this one right here, give us the equation for germ theory. Betty made this famous with her discussion with masters of chemistry, Baltard Geostreber, who said that math was science. So I think Betty was just laying in wait, right, for him to start with his mathematics. And she goes, well, is germ theory science? He says, yeah. She goes, can you post the equation for germ theory? Had them fetching and stepping. Geostreber, the numpty dipshit, was soliciting advice from one of his numpty dipshit biologists in chat, trying to get him to give an equation for germ theory. It was the most ridiculous thing. The biologist in the chat was like, no, cut it, stop, mute. Right? Because it's non sequitur. Math is immaterial, abstract, rigidly domain specific, and at best merely describes. It explains exactly squat, nada, niente, zero, zilch. Conversely, actual scientists are in the business of explaining phenomena by validating or invalidating cause and effect relationships between independent and dependent variables via rigorous hypothesis testing. It's a big difference. Can you show one case in all of history where mathematics caused any phenomena? That's non sequitur, right? Can you show the laws of motion, which are debunked, by the way, equations, causing a billiard ball to roll across the table? Even if they weren't debunked, this statement is still non sequitur. It's batshit insane. We're in a category error. According to mathematics, there's an infinite distance between point A and point B. That's called Zeno's paradox. That is, if I shoot an arrow from my back porch to the tree 20 feet away, then according to mathematics, that arrow should never reach the friggin' tree. Think about it. So you know you're batshit insane. This is another category error. Just think about this one, Zeno's paradox. And then our favorite, remember this, folks? Bam! Models like these? You think that was just jokes? We're going to find out here in a second. So models, I remember when I first come across this citation in Wiki, it was really funny. What does Wiki have to say about it? And this is actually cited, by the way. This isn't your grandmother stating this. Reification, also known as concretism, shout out to Nathan, hypostatization, or the fallacy of misplaced concretedness, is a fallacy of ambiguity when an abstraction, that is an abstract belief or hypothetical construct, is treated as if it were a concrete real event or physical entity. In other words, it is the error of treating something that is not concrete, such as an idea, as a concrete thing. A common case of reification is the confusion of a model with reality. Simple, period, end of story. The map is not the territory. So let's raise up a couple levels. In academia, we're going to head out to Stanford.edu, and they're going to tell us what models are in science. Are you ready? Get your pen and paper out, folks. We've got probing models, phenomenological models, computational models, developmental models, explanatory models, impoverished models, testing models, idealized models, theoretical models, scale models, heuristic models, caricature models, didactic models, fantasy models, toy models, imaginary models, yeah, I got that one, mathematical models, substitute models, iconic models, formal models, analog models, and instrumental models. What the hell are you talking about? You're batshit insane. And then, as a cherry on top from this same reference, they state this. Models play an important role, models, so, okay, they pluralize that. That's good. Okay. Models, that means all of them, I guess, play an important role in science. But despite the fact that they have generated considerable interest among philosophers, there remain significant lacunas in our understanding of what models are and how they work. Didn't they just contradict themselves? How can it have an important role on one hand and then not know what the hell they are on the other? So we got an important role for this, but we don't know what the hell it is. It said lacunas, right? What does lacuna mean? A blank space, a missing part, a gap. I don't know what else to tell you here, folks. They're destroyed by their own words. With models, this is a joke. The important point, let's find out what an actual model is. A scientific model. That's what we want. Because there's different types of models, right? You got runway models. Remember these guys? Remember, I just posted. So these guys, yeah, remember those. You got runway models. You got computer models, economic models made from all kind of dipshit stuff, right? That's not what we're talking about here. That only leads to equivocation. So they're obviously talking about scientific models. Well, let's figure out what that is. So let's go to Indiana University, their chemistry department. The important point that Becker introduced is that the explanation of a natural phenomena, see, we're in this science thing, i.e., that is model theory, so they equate these two words, okay, we'll get back to that, must be testable by experimentation. Uh-oh. In other words, once a model is proposed as an explanation of a phenomena, it can only be considered a scientific model, what we're talking about, if it can be objectively tested by experiment. That's what a scientific model is. So what I do, I wait for somebody to say model, and we'll finally get to this part after I ask them to show it to us, and they can't ever. So if that be the case, and it is, so you say you have a scientific model. Okie dokie. Natural phenomena observed, please. We just go through the routine. Alternative hypothesis, independent variable, dependent variable, and no. You got to give me those. Based on, you said it was a scientific model. Well, the tenants say that you must give me those. Every single last one. That. If you can't, then we're not talking about scientific models. We might be talking about these. Right? And I'll make you look like an idiot. That you are. For even model, that's what you're going to get. It's going to be bad too. You'll rue the day. Now, I'm going to leave you with this. From the University of Rochester Physics Labs. Common mistakes in applying the scientific method. That one that doesn't exist, you never know. It depends on the day. It either doesn't exist or there's infinite number of scientific models, or I'm getting this from grade school or elementary school. Let's go to the University of Rochester Physics Labs Elementary School from Professor Wolfson. Let's see what he has to say about this. The most fundamental error is to mistake the hypothesis for an explanation of a phenomena without performing experimental tests. Sometimes common sense and logic tempt us into believing that no test is needed. There are numerous examples of this dating from Greek philosophers to the present day. This is an outstanding statement, and I'd just like to point out, Your Honor, that I have yet to hear a single viable scientific hypothesis for anything from Baltardia in 7 years. Regarding anything, not even regarding anything with their ferret, just anything. They don't even know what it is. And Professor Wolfs is telling them, even if you have the hypothesis, without testing it, you got nothing. And you don't even have this. So how's that working out for you? Questions, comments?
The guy, would you say it's Professor Wolf?
Professor Wolfs?
Wolfs.
Yep.
Of Rochester. So I tried to make this point earlier. Obviously, I'm owner of the statue of the professor at Rochester. But when I tried to handedly describe it as changing if A, then B, supposition, the alternative hypothesis that he's talking about, into if A, then B. He's saying that's the biggest mistake you can make. Correct me if I'm wrong, that's what he said was the biggest mistake you can make.
Yeah, without testing it. Just saying it.
Without testing it, exactly. So when I turn if A, then B, as a supposition of A causing B, into if A, then B, obviously, I'm not testing that. I'm just changing the way I say it.
Okay.
It's just a waste of your time if you then follow it through to experiment. Point being, if you're going to say A, then B, there needs to be something behind why you're saying then B. Because for it to have any validity, you're going to take it to experiment. Don't waste your time. This is the kind of the crap that we hear thrown out there. If A, then B, then B, and I can throw anything at it and just use logic or nuance to kind of validate it. But the point in science is it takes it to experiment. And if you see that, I don't want to get into these alternative hypotheses stuff. There's a lot of detail, but to take something to experiment takes time and effort. A shitload more time than just coming up with the idea of if A then B. So there's a trivialization of it that is frustration in the way it's described, these supposed effect, the methodology. Just the Michio Kaku way of doing it. Just lucky guesses. Yeah.
John, I find it funny you say that you haven't heard a viable hypothesis from Baltardia, basically, since you've been out here. And I just want to say that makes sense, doesn't it? Because these same people were calling you independent variable John, right? Well, they wouldn't do that if they had an independent variable, which would already be in their hypothesis. So that's why you could never hear a viable hypothesis, because they don't have any independent variable to start with. And then when you ask for it, they just call you a clown. So, okay. But you're the guys that thought you have science. You're the one asserting science.
That's the old and busted, dude. Remember, they said that years ago. Well, from 2015, 2016, 2017, that all the science proves it. Proves that
Yep.
if you believe in the flat Earth, then you must deny all of science and physics. That's what I heard when I first came out here, and it went on for a real long time. And now, all of a sudden, science doesn't prove anything.
That's a hell of a switch.
Isn't it?
Uh-huh. What happened in between that time and this time? Sorry, Dan.
Well, there's been an actual heliocentric change of positioning that took place 107 years ago in terms of experimental validity being asserted to actual phenomena being observed. But now they're not shy to assert cause and effect relationships, just never leave them in a realm that can actually be tested. So the specific cause and effect relationship I'm referring to is the uneven distribution of mass causing the bending of space-time. Well, in terms of having a viable hypothesis, you first got to observe a phenomena. Step one is observe a phenomena. Okay, let's all hold hands and observe time bend. We can figure out what causes it. Who's observing time bending? Well, you're not. It's a description in a mathematics, geometry. That's all it is. So it's never going to be something that you're going to be able to qualify or quantify in a physical way, then figure out what the cause is in a natural experiment with the apparatus and your presumed cause of the effect that you haven't even observed. You described it in a geometric sense. You've literally conjured it into existence through language. There's no phenomena to study. That's where they are content to at least assert a cause and effect relationship, quasi seeming to be an experiment, even though it definitely isn't, and call that science. Bring us nicely back to the beginning of the presentation.
Something that was just mentioned earlier. I'm feeding back on someone there. Something that was mentioned earlier. Just wait. I'll keep this very brief. When the what they called an experiment, the Ares failure was brought up. The name alone tells you that it was definitely never a real science experiment. And how you know it was never a real science experiment is due to the word failure, as it's logically impossible for any science experiment that adheres to scientific method to be considered a failure, because you always prove one or the other.
I think you're missing my point, Bri. The reason I said it was described as a failure, and the reason I thought it was relevant to mention with the way in which Einstein's photoelectric effect, this is just a logical observation. Okay, and if you was to describe this as the logic that you can draw for it, as to whether the surface is moving or whether the emanating light is moving, if it was just described as that, it would be devastating. Even if you didn't put experiment on it, this logical conclusion is devastating to the heliocentric model. The only way you can record it in history, if there are controllers out there that affect the way in which information is titled to us, so therefore in the way in which we receive it as its validity, how we rank its validity, would be to do that, to describe such a thing that has such devastating logical inference as a failure. Well, I'm not going to bother to look at a failure. You get me? That was the point I was making.
I wasn't in contention about that at all. I totally understood that point. I remember that being made probably by you in the past. I totally agree with that. No, I was just talking about how the word failure being in there, it's impossible for, I'm just focusing on that word in a different way than you are. The word failure, it's logically impossible for any science experiment that's really a science experiment that adheres to scientific method. It's logically impossible for that
He points valid,
to ever
Brian.
be considered a
That's not the
failure.
point Adam was
That's
making.
my only point.
Yeah,
I'm not going against what you said.
No, your point's completely valid. What you're saying is something's getting proven no matter what. If you perform the experiment correctly and you've got a viable hypothesis, on actualization of that hypothesis, something's getting proven. That's your point, right, Brian? Adam's just pointing out how the repositioning of Ares failure has been done. It's just a different point. It doesn't mean you're not wrong.
No, actually, Brian, that's really good because it's hiding it, isn't it? It's a failure, right? But as we've talked about earlier, it's that repositioning. Why reposition it like that? Even if we've set up something scientifically, i.e. a failure, our experiment failed, we accept the null. Yet the way in which it's labelled is, this is crap, don't touch it, it's a failure. And it's a valid point. What you're saying, it's almost as if it's labelled to have no validity, even though it doesn't in terms of the remit it's got, but it's a poisoning of the well almost, isn't it?
Well, unless I'm wrong, it's been a while since I've looked at Ares failure. Correct me if I'm wrong. It involves the premise of the telescope itself moving, i.e., the ground it's attached to moving to get a positive result, which they failed to get. Am I wrong in that?
Objection. What I'd like to point out is they were with the telescope. You were measuring the elevation angle of the star, trying to change its position within the telescope by changing the medium you observe through. So it's perfect flat Earth proof.
Oh, there! I've never considered it that way. Wow.
It's still an elevation angle, isn't it?
I'm slightly lost for words, John. That's genius.
As far as
Right.
the word failure, like it's the okie doke, right? Because what are the balls telling us right now, right? Science doesn't prove things; it only disproves things, right? Well, like what we're saying is, if you disprove something, aren't you automatically proving something else?
Yes.
Right. Right. So with that word in there, it's like the okie doke. They want us to focus on, oh, we didn't prove anything, but not proving anything, him failing is actually proving something else. But like Brian said, and Adam, they don't want us to focus on that.
Well, this is the great thing, Chop, isn't it? And we've got, unless someone wants to throw another ball into the ring, but we've either got the Earth rotating underneath, a la Coriolis, or we've got a stationary Earth with the stars rotating above us. Hence the need for an okie doke, because to look anywhere near the null, and this is why they like to wrap it up with the supposed experiment of exploring the effect of the luminiferous ether. Got it out that time.
You looked you got the pronunciation off the internet for that.
I put my teeth back in. I had to. But that's the okie doke, isn't it? Wrap it up so that you don't accept the null. But we've said the null has a consequence. Now, in this case, this was all, we're trying to show you that we're rotating, or that there is rotation. Now, if we reject the ether as any component that we didn't have any control over anyway in this quasi-experiment, then we've either got what we're on or what's above rotating. And it clearly makes a logical distinction there based on scientific knowledge, the behavior of light. Okay?
But still, you're using a flat plane either way. So it's either the flat plane that's rotating or the apparent position of the stars.
That's correct.
Formulated.
You're kind of undermining Adam's point, but still genius all the same. And Adam's point equally as important. And I'm glad he's finally got to the point where we actually stress the consequences of Ares' failure. Really failed to prove that Earth's moving. That's what it actually failed to prove. Well,
right.
Like Adam said,
I'd like to interrupt. Did he actually perform did he actually measure elevation angles?
He was trying to know something different.
How it must operate is on a plane.
That didn't answer my question.
He was trying to change the angle to the stars. Yeah, so that's elevation angle.
He was trying to change the angle to the star. I don't know about that.
Yes, he does. He changes the angle of the telescope. He's saying that if the ground's moving, then I'll have to adjust the telescope because it slows down the light. Crap phraseology, just how he phrases it, as it enters the telescope. So to compensate for that, I'll have to tip the telescope, change the angle.
Yeah, but that's not getting the elevation angle to the stars.
Not measuring an elevation angle, but it's an angle adjustment off a plane. That angle adjustment requires a plane.
I'd have to read through. I'm still not getting it. I'd have to read through it. I think it might be. I think it's genius.
I think it's excellent, John. Refractive curvature, John. That's brilliant.
How do you get an angle off a curved surface?
Yeah. Well, just John. Yes, he does.
He does.
I've got. Yeah, I was looking at it the other day. I haven't gone into great detail, so I can't cite exactly. But I was looking at a big table the other day. It's in my head. It's weird, isn't it? How these things pop up. I've just literally tried to pull up a video or a quick Google search to find the table again. But there is a full table and it's got longitude, latitudes, angles, etc. In it. So it's all done within that, and I think it's done within separate water flooded telescopes as well. That's the point of it. Like I say, it sits within this zootetic kind of empiricism, and this is the whole point of this Elizabethan way of looking at things. There are other ways of trying to use the validity of empiricism to draw a logical conclusion, not because back then they're not going to be, they've spent a long time defining the word science so it has the validity it has today, and they understand the differences back then. So when they make a claim, they stick it in the right box, which is what we've got to learn to do today, whether it's logic or this. And this is a kind of zetetic, which is a kind of logical inference on studying the lights in the skies.
All right, so you're saying he has data with that? All right, fair enough.
Yeah, I'll pull it up. I'm going to look into it this week now, John, on purpose.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't looked at it in years, man. I don't know. I was just putting the question out. Yep, fair enough.
Something else occurs to me that Chocolate said. Our opponents occasionally will say science doesn't prove things; it only disproves things. Oh well, you're gonna love Airy's failure. It disproved we're spinning.
Indeed.
Well, unless there's a luminiferous ether.
You said it twice. You're just showing off now.
I'm done.
At least we're not talking about hypothesization.
You still did. You did that purposely.
But when he says he's trying to change the angle to the star by filling the telescope with water, what's his baseline?
I don't know. I'd have to look at. Like I said, I don't know.
It's a flat Earth. It's a flat Earth. He can't get an angle from a curved surface, can he? Quantum eraser.
No, he cannot.
No, he can't. So
Especially-
he needs a flat plane to do this, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
Yeah, he's operating within the celestial sphere model for his angles, so he requires.
That's correct. That's right. That's exactly what I thought. What went through my head was your words ringing. Are you going to need a celestial sphere for that, aren't you? You're going to need that with a flat plane to get the angle and adjust it. That's right. You need a flat plane either way. It's a fact. Good show.
Yeah, it was a good show today, man. I really enjoyed it. Say again?
Got people in here. People in here that we haven't even said hello to yet.
Yeah, I know. Are you ready to go through? We don't have. We can end it, but we can have a little extended version if people wanted to talk. That's fine.
They want to talk on air if they're going to talk at all.
Yeah.
Notice how I didn't interrupt today.
Well done, Neil.
Shut up, Neil. Trying to interest.
No, shut the F up.
I nearly called 911. I thought you'd had a heart attack or something because I've not heard from you.
I'm sucking it all in, baby.
I am going to say, like, some guests, so BCFC Island. How you doing? Got any questions or comments on scientific method, independent variable, so on and so forth?
I'm literally just in, but the only thing I want to say is about the Sagnac experiment, or whatever you want to call it. How they got the baseline on a moving Earth would never happen. You know, with the light traveling around. I actually have to go now. There's someone at the door, but they could never get the baseline on a moving Earth. Is my point.
You're saying Sanyak's got something similar to what John's just pointed out. Oh, okay. Well, I'll have to ponder on that one. But yes, Grace sounds as good as any.
No, I think I get that point. If you look at the size of what you conduct, and excuse the vernacular, because it makes it a lot easier. You look at the size of which you conduct the Sagnac experiment upon, to try and apply that rotating disc, your roundabout in terms of Coriolis effect, to try and apply that in terms of the effects of light to the Earth is preposterous.
Right.
That makes sense. It's not scalable.
To do it in 3 dimensions is a bit absurd, is what you're saying, or to apply it to
3 dimensions. You've got a rotating disc with all your mirrors set up on, and whatever effect you're conjuring up in that, demonstration. How the hell do you make it applicable to a rotating Earth? It's not the two. All you can do is say that all we've got is a movement of this within this experiment. It's got no applicable to reality. It's only got an applicability to just the apparatus you've set up.
Did you say applicability?
Applicability, yeah. No. Yeah, I did, didn't I? I did.
How
Spectrotocoloscopy.
It's more about the hijacking, though. They lean so much on the word experiment. I mean, what you've really got is a parlor trick, and it's a gadget and a gizmo that you're looking at. And what they say is the effect and the cause, and that is really just the hijacking of the language when they call it an experiment, because it isn't.
Can I get back to Airy's failure?
You can.
I just think it's interesting that changing the medium doesn't affect the angle to the star. So how are you going to put refraction into those terms?
You can't necessarily make that statement. I mean, if you got it close enough to the horizon, you might have an alteration in your result, right?
Fraction's the key. Fraction's the key. So if the Earth isn't moving, then at the point of incidence of refraction, i.e. when the starlight meets the point of incidence, the phase change, the water, phase changes. But what the alternative, that's reality, by the way, just one phase change comes in. And adjust the angle once, and it will always stay in the same spot at the center of the telescope. But if the Earth's moving, then it will vary, won't it? From that, because at the point of incidence, yeah, the stars were moving previously. At the point of incidence, everything stops. The Earth's not moving anymore. First point. But if you've got a rotating ball at the point of incidence, the Earth continues moving. So the telescope keeps moving forward. It's minute, but it's moving forwards, and the light will then hit slightly further back instead of at the center of the telescope. So refraction is the key here, because the refraction only occurs once.
Well, I mean, does it? It's changing
That's what I
mediums,
mean.
isn't it?
It's the way it plays
Yeah,
out.
that's Snell's law. That's very specifically Snell's law, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
But because it's going slower, because the light travels slower in the water, once it's going to hit further. If the bottom of the once it hits, and Snell's law applies, yeah. At that point, if everything else is stationary, it just continues along that line, according to Snell's law. But according to Snell's law, it's going to continue along that path in that same medium, even though the medium's not going to change the angle. The bottom is moving. Yeah, the Earth's moving still. So the point in which the light hits is no longer at the center. Is the point? Yeah. After Snell's law's applied, you're moving the bottom after the angle of incidence is the point. Whereas on a flat Earth, stationary Earth, you're not moving the bottom after the angle of incidence.
Well, I thought,
if I may. Guys?
Hold on 1 second, Owen. Go ahead, John.
well, I thought with the changing medium that the angle of incident would change. We're looking at a star, we're changing the medium, the angle of incident has not changed. So celestial refraction, what does that do to that?
We're talking about Snell's law, the medium change. At the point of the medium change, yeah, that means the light is going to come into the telescope at a different angle, as if it was coming into just the same medium, which was air previously. So we affect the angle change. Yeah. So,
but it doesn't.
It's that, if you fill it with water, it does.
I thought that was the failure.
Any chance QE can dig out a video and play it?
No.
How?
Can I make my point?
And the failure is that you don't get a drift still at the bottom.
You don't get an angle change, or you do?
No, you don't, because the Earth's not moving. You would only get an angular movement if the Earth was moving, wouldn't you?
If it was, you'd have to tilt the telescope further forward to compensate for it as the Earth moved. So rather than the light entering the telescope and then hitting the side of the telescope because the grounds continue to move after the light has changed medium, if you compensated for it, i.e. that did happen, you stop seeing the light, you would have to adjust the angle to allow it to enter the medium of the water and then carry on at a more steep, less steep angle, carry on through the water as the ground continued to move with the light traversing the water.
Oh, all right. Let's get away from the ground moving, because that's just silly. Okay, let's just
Well, that's the no, it is, but that's why it's called a failure, because that compensation didn't need to be done. So, in other words, for that to be true, you would have to compensate because the ground's moving, and you don't have to make any compensation. It enters and just goes straight through, and you can see it. That's it. So there's no compensation needed because the ground's moving, which was what was supposed would need to be done.
Right, but I'm not talking ground moving. What I want to say is the light is entering the telescope and entering a different medium. We all agree to that. The angle is not changing. That's against Snell's law, is it not?
No, it is changing. Right.
Can I say something?
So he had to tilt the telescope to.
We've got a
affect the position of the
disagreement.
star.
Yeah, hold on. Let me just summarize before Arvin jumps in, unless it's
No,
specifically
John's going to
about.
have a point because he's good. So I'm explain it again, John. So we can address it because we're.
I'll summarize it. John's saying that it traverses from air to water, therefore you're going to have refraction. That's Snell's law, right? So it's going to change its path. It's going to deviate from the straight path. Well, your description, or Airy's failure's description, to be more accurate, is that it enters the telescope, doesn't change angle, but once it's traversing through the water, it's going to hit the sides unless you compensate with the angle. That means that in that description, once he has the light enter the telescope at whatever angle it is, let's say it's 5 degrees without compensation, it just enters the water and carries on straight. Therefore, it hasn't actually adhered to Snell's law at all, is John's point.
Well, it's adhered to Snell's law if it's varied from the telescope without water in.
Cool.
John, it's going to adhere to Snell's law, isn't it? When the water's in there, there will be. So the point at which the light hits the back of the reflector will be slightly different. Therefore, the angle we measure on a flat Earth will be slightly changed. The telescope will have to be slightly tilted when it's full of water. Yeah.
Which does not happen. It's Airy's failure, remember?
No, the failure is that there isn't a movement.
Right, he didn't have to move the telescope.
Because light travels slower in water than it does in air. It's that differential they measure to say, well, there should be a difference there. So the point it hits at the back of the telescope.
Was the point it hits at the back of the telescope changed when he added the water to it?
So, say again.
Was the point at the back of the telescope changed when the medium was changed?
I wasn't aware, yeah. I mean,
so he had to tip the telescope to adjust, or he did not?
Yes. He had to tip the telescope when it was filled, yes. For the focal point, for the where he was looking at to be, yeah, there was an angular change for the focal point, yeah. Somebody's put it up. BCFC's put it in the text.
I thought that his supposition is that the water would slow down the telescope, so he would have to change the angle, but he didn't have to change the angle.
Yeah. So the first point is to put the Snell's law into effect. So you change the angle of incidence. So according to Snell's law, we've now changed the angle of incidence. Now we're going to look at the effect.
So he did tip the telescope, or he did not?
Has to tip the telescope so that the telescope is no longer looking directly at the object. It's focusing on it through the angle of incidence.
Then there's a further compensation that would need to be made because Earth's claim to move after it enters the medium of the water, the light that is. And that
And-
compensation wasn't needed to be made.
And light travels slower through water than it does through the other medium of air. So therefore, if it can, once you've aligned it, it should stay aligned. Yeah. So that's the variation they're measuring there. Is that bit? If the bottom still continues moving after it enters the second medium. Yeah. That's feedback.
He's feeding back through you, Nathan.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so then you've got that set up with the agreement of Snell's law. You've got the point that it's going to move. Now, if it's going to move at a slower rate than the other reference frame that you reference it to, which is the standard telescope, from straight in, which you can't define the difference between, and you've got this. If it varies still over time, and this comes back to the tables we was talking about with John. Back to the tables. If that then varies over time, after you've aligned it, then that shows you it's the stars that are moving. That's the failure. I need to pull it all up. I'm going to pull it all up, right? And it's probably worth a real good spread out, isn't it? This, because it's been just sat there for a while. It's worth a good.
I haven't. I have to admit, I haven't looked
out.
at it in years.
Yeah. I mean, I'm struggling to speak with confidence on because I haven't got the number. I love numbers.
Yeah.
So I'm say no more. But I'll go and pull it all out because, I've got to admit, the majority is Dr. Malcolm Bowden. I think is the guy that probably most flat earthers are reference with. But the logic seems sound. I'll do the numbers, both Johns, and I think it's worth a little, maybe a QE Live or even a Ballbusters look at this in real detail.
Well, from my understanding, he didn't. He was using kind of an arcane understanding of light, anyway. But he aimed his telescope at a star, and then he supposed if the Earth was turning, that he would have to tilt his telescope after he filled it with water to adjust for the Earth turn. He filled it with water and didn't have to adjust his telescope at all. If that's the case, then he didn't account for Snell's law, which, the stars are like that. They crap on everything you want to do with them anyway.
That's not my understanding of the observation and the inference you can draw from it. So I think a proper presentation is worthwhile on this.
I do vaguely remember that in the Bowden video, explaining that needing an initial compensation, and it was something like 5 degrees to compensate for the refraction. Now, it's been 5 years, probably longer, since I last watched that video about Aries failure, laying it out. So I think it does warrant a revisit. This isn't that. This is just scratching our heads going, how do we remember how Aries failure worked? I know we've all got a pretty 99% good understanding of it, but there's obviously some nuance that maybe needs a little bit more investigation. It's the revelation that no matter which way we dice it, it's going to need a flat plane, regardless of how much inference you can or cannot draw from it, or where its failures lie in its methodology. Fascinating stuff, but Arwen's been waiting in the wings for about 15 minutes now.
I won't conclude then. I'll go on.
Sorry, I fell asleep. No, just kidding. It's just that has absolutely nothing to do with everything you talked about so far. So
Wouldn't worry.
right. So I was thinking, or basically looking at this picture that somebody posted in the BALLBUSTERS live stream chat, and then I was thinking, based on terrestrial refraction, which we all know is nonsense, but just thinking about hey, you know what? If what we see, the apparent flat Earth around us, is actually like a miraging effect of the horizon miraging up and all that. It's basically, yeah, an image projected upwards. Well, then at night, we would still be able to see the stars through that because it's light and the ground is black, right? It's black. So a mirage that is supposedly black can't basically block light because black is the lack of light and it's a mirage. Well, then the starlight and the moon perhaps would shine straight through the visuals of the horizon. And don't think that happens. Just a realization.
Found.
Can I ask a question?
You can, Brian, as you've not said almost more than 3 or 4 sentences the whole show. I think it's only fair.
Thank you. Can you create a rainbow with moonlight?
We're off the reservation, man.
Well, it's probably not going to be full spectrum light, right? It's going to be different light coming.
Based on the heliocentric claim of our rainbows formed, there's absolutely no reason whatsoever why light reflected off the moon through raindrops shouldn't form a rainbow, Brian.
That's correct.
Why do you ask?
Well, that's it. Like, it's supposed to be the same sunlight that they're claiming creates the rainbow. I don't know much about it, the rainbows, but if it is, if you go by their claim, which is what you just said, then there is no reason why we shouldn't see rainbows at nighttime. During a full moon, we should be able to see a rainbow in some way.
Yeah.
Once there's water in the air.
In that regard, I mean, what I take from that is, I know already that the moonlight isn't reflected sunlight. I know that beyond doubt anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, I obviously, yeah, I don't ascribe to
That's
that
an
rubbish
interesting
at all.
point.
But within their claim, there should be rainbows at full moons.
Well,
once there's been rain or
well, that would be hard to kind of detect with the background being dark.
Yeah, well, no, full moon night. If it's after just been raining and there's water in the air and the light shines through, the moon, like a full moon night, is pretty bright. So, especially using over water, I reckon you would be able to see it.
I don't know.
Let's see. Well, let's see if they can prove that it's real, because it has to be for their model. Do you know what I mean?
What? Their model? You wouldn't happen to have an example of that, would you?
I don't.
Or Nathan Bouvet.
Nathan talked about the buffet this week and last week that we all gorged on. And when you first enter this, and the moon's an interesting thing. I have no idea. When I talk about the majesty, it messes with my head. And if you look at me on Iron Realm, well, I'll stand by what I did as I wandered round my garden like a lunatic, with probes, temperature probes, doing strange things.
Like a lunatic.
Yeah, I admit it. But even today, right, the results I got, in my observation, and I was clear, I labelled it as a test, and I still stand by it because I was using the testing of the thermometer, is why I validated with testing. But I never implied it with science, and I think it was before I met you, John, so I wasn't that daft. But there's some strange shit goes off. You look at the pictures of the moon in the day with a blue sky behind it, to try and put it into any kind of physicality in its behaviors, and even thermodynamically, which is what some of the silly numbers I collated show it, and it still messes with my head, like I said, to this day, because I know what I did, and it was unbelievable. Yeah, but this is the majesty of the heavens, and to try and put it into anything that we use in practicality on the ground, on this earth, in our lives, try and put it in those same dimensions is just think totally futile. just from the simple observations I've made, that stuff's weird. Looking at it and measuring it with a thermometer, even in the crude way I did, it defied logic. So I'll leave the heavens to God in terms of trying to understand it. I've got enough problems down here.
My youngest daughter asked me today, asked me, why is the sky blue? It was adorable. And I looked at my wife and I said, I don't know. And my wife looked back at me. We shrugged our shoulders. And then I sarcastically talked about Rayleigh scattering being the current understanding. It was adorable. Why is the sky blue, Daddy?
Yeah, she kicked you in the nuts and teabagged. You had no answer. No answer whatsoever.
Right.
You know?
What went through my head was all the stuff about Rayleigh scattering. I was like, if you were born 10 years ago, I'd have just, at 3 years old, just instinctually filled your head with nonsense on the spot. Amazing, isn't it?
They kill your kids, don't they? With questions like that. It's the honesty of the question. Why is it? And you can't lie to your kid. So you've got. I don't know. Is still now. I've looked at argon, noble gases, illuminations, all of these beautiful things that we have in the science. But as I alluded to before, we don't know the majesty of the heavens. Yeah, all we've got is this. What would Arwin, what would you call it? This physicality assumption bias, yeah? Or this heliocentric system that we try to attribute the causes still to now. Like you say, with scattering and, as I said, illumination and noble gases. I ain't got a Scooby-Doo, yeah? Because none of it fits with what I see.
Yeah, the celestial lights are a difficult one.
100%. 100% agree with you, Adam. The moon is crazy, and it's like, yeah, the majesty of the sky is just incredible, and it's sad that people are running around with all this ridiculous stories about what it might be or what it could be, and they just assert that shit as fact. It's instead of looking at it for what it is, which we'll never know. And that's the beauty of it. The moon is incredible to me. I don't know what the hell that thing is, man, but like the way Adam describes it, is like sometimes it just drives you crazy just thinking about what it is, like what it could be. And we don't have a freaking clue.
It always gives me a feel of like a Plato's cave situation. It's just so bizarre, right? There has to be something behind it. It is like kind of a tease as to the situation.
Hey, Brian, hold up, Brian. Somebody posted a lunar rainbow in BALLBUSTERS live stream chat.
Wow, I'll have to check that out.
Thank you.
The reason I brought my daughter up, typically, was because this is a very big part of the heliocentric deception, or the need for it. Which is to say that Adam described it as me being kicked in the balls by my daughter, and I had to turn around and go, I don't know. Well, to a 3-year-old, I and my mother are a world, with the ultimate authority to a 3-year-old. Turn around and say, I don't know. It destroys your authority to that 3-year-old. It doesn't destroy it. I'm over exaggerating a little bit, but to make the point, the powers that should not be, not having an answer for something like what is the sky, why is it blue, why do we have rainbows? Those are questions that you want the general public to just know that the person in charge knows those things, and I've got it well and truly under control. So I don't need to ponder them, because people pondering stuff is very bad news for keeping them under control. I don't want them to be thinking. That's bad. And having something with a big question mark over it means you're gonna definitely think about it. So you need to rub out that question mark somehow. That's partly why we have the heliocentric deception. You need to have an answer of sorts, and picking one out of a hat's not going to do. You've got to have a whole story behind it to make it believable. So that's, like I say, partly why we have the heliocentric model in terms of the sky vacuum and outer space and stories about what the lights are. And going back as long as you can see through history, regardless of if you believe it or not, there's always been a necessity to explain what the stars are to the people. Now, those stories might now be described as old-fashioned stories about what they were when they were gods or when they were this or when they were that. But now we've just got planets. It's just another story to keep the people under control by letting them know that the people in charge know this stuff. They're not stupid. They know what the sky is. So you don't need to worry your precious little stupid head about it. Yeah, that's what this really boils down to.
And on top of that, if they can confuse, I'm glad QE covered it in his presentation, the difference between quantification and qualification, because that's like their biggest trick. And I don't even know if they're aware that they're doing it, but they start quantifying things that they can't qualify and just accept them as true because they made up some arbitrary scale that they can't apply to reality.
I'll go through the last couple of guests that haven't had a chance to speak. We're on not tanks, no tanks. No thanks, no tanks.
They're from Dice Low.
Hey, Neil, relax. Nathan is in charge of administrating the show.
Might not have anything to
I
say.
couldn't get through. I couldn't get through without interrupting one time.
I think Rye was still desperate to get in. I know. We chopped him up a couple of times before we get.
Anything? I think he's satisfied with his lunar friggin' bow.
Yeah, it looks like it's a rainbow. I didn't watch the video, but it's a rainbow supposedly through from moonlight at falls, waterfalls in Zambia.
Yep.
So seems to be a rainbow.
Yeah.
Oh.
But the reason is that coming back to that Orwellian physicality assumption bias, and the whole heliocentric model is that. And that's why Brian has these oppositions. And I like it because it is that playing out of their logic that you're talking about, isn't it, really? It's if A, then B in their world. And they define the parameters.
Well, they give an entire dimension to this angular spectacle that we get to see. And they just turn it into their mind in this 3D giant universe. And it's not that hard, really, to imagine it. So...
Shout out, Superchat. Sorry to interrupt you, Arwen. Tony Wickham again. Thank you, sir. A glober who believes in space is a parasite, sometimes known as a lunar tick.
That's actually worthy of 10th. That's very good.
Good.
It's not a pun, it's the correct etymology. That's what it comes from. Be a lunatic is to be somebody who's out howling at the moon. Quite literally. That's what a lunatic is. Same with lunacy. Same word, same etymology.
Sorry, Arwen, I rumpushed you. Go ahead.
No, I'd finished up my point.
Okay. So, no tanks. Going once, going twice. Gone. Yeah, Nathan, you want to take it? Hold on. Hold on. We're going down the list. I'll go back up. There's a couple people that joined. I'll get to them.
They're all popping in now, QE. I can see them. It's an administrative nightmare. I'm staying out of it.
All right. Sin Cleanser. And Nathan, I took over your job. Sorry about that. You want to take over?
That's good. It's good.
Okay.
That's all you can.
Okay. So, Sin Cleanser, any questions on we're trying to stick to the presentation as best we can, even though we haven't the whole time. Any questions, comments, concerns on the presentation itself? Going once, going twice. Gone. Snow Burner X. Love it. Questions, comments, concerns on the presentation?
Maybe. What? So it's very helpful to kind of pick apart, obviously, a lot of what's going on, and what they claim is science and what's not. So that's very helpful. So thank you.
Mhm.
But the other question is, I guess, can you, without saying something that's completely stupid, but if you were to apply the concept of the scientific method, can you apply it to things that aren't, as long as you don't call it science? Like
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there a name for that?
No, it's just identifying cause and effect relationships. That's fine. You can use it.
Okay, I didn't know if there was.
Troubleshooting.
Troubleshooting, yes.
Yeah, because I was like, that was kind of what I figured. Because yeah, all right, thank you.
Yeah, you definitely can. In fact, it's what we do it all the time without even knowing it, right? But it's just not natural science. That's the point.
All right, thank you very much. I just didn't know if there was a name. So
Yep.
appreciate it.
Yep.
There's a
Many
bit of like,
things that are unfairly labelled pseudoscience simply because they've claimed that they're scientific when there's no application of the scientific method. If you actually look up the definition of pseudoscience, it's just simply somebody who's asserting science when they haven't actually gone through that specific method of science. And that doesn't necessarily invalidate what they're claiming. It invalidates the language they've used. That doesn't necessarily impeach what they've actually put forward. So you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You have to take it on a case-by-case basis. Just because it's hijacking scientific vernacular doesn't necessarily mean it's invalid. That's all I'm trying to get at.
Right, and I definitely did that right when I figured this out. The first time I heard this presentation, I did go on a bit of a rampage, and that was a problem.
I think it's
easy
a
to throw
really
the
good
baby out with
question.
the bathwater. Sorry, whoever I'm talking over. Just said it's easy to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You hear somebody saying, well, this is an experiment, and you go, ha, have you got an independent variable? And they go, no. What, did you observe a natural phenomena? No, it's happening in a gizmo. And you go, oh, well, therefore it has absolutely no validity whatsoever. You go, well, no, but if they'd just called it troubleshooting rather than science, would it have validity then? I look at the logic that's been used, and have the steps been followed just without a natural phenomena? Does that result in a good set of logic at the end? That's all that really matters.
I'm totally in agreement. We've talked about a fair bit tonight. Snowburner X. I agree with you, Kiwi. Cool name. This science is composed of these bits. It's trying to use empiricism to define cause and effect. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with using empiricism to do other things. You may not be able to define cause and effect. I talked about my moonlight tests. Yeah, did the best I could to be empirical in everything I did. Control as many of the variables that were out there to tweak from, just to try and get some kind of inference. And I used the word earlier, zetetic. This was the, like I say, I'll coin Elizabethan kind of term. And understanding that we're dealing with stuff up there that's got nothing to do with science. Got nothing whatsoever. Try and put it in science is stupid. So we'll invent a word, zetetic astronomy. Yeah. But within zetetic astronomy, we want to use the power of empiricism. So that whatever logical conclusions we're going to come to, i.e. Aries failure, it has the validity of empiricism, which we've witnessed through science. And we can't do cause and effect, but we can take the strength of the whole mechanism of the scientific method and stick it in something else that might give us a bit more logical validity to whatever we're doing. And that, I think, is where some confusion occurs, but why I think your question's so brilliant, mate.
Well, thank you, because that's actually exactly what I was asking. Because I could say you could take the method itself and apply it outside of natural phenomena, it just wouldn't be science. Like I do a lot of debugging and code or things like that.
Sure.
But then what you were talking about was just those simple things where it's like, okay, I can logically set this contraption up, and as long as I'm not, trying to
Sure.
call it
Sure, you're trying to find the cause of the problem so you can fix it.
right, and I had no language to describe like what that would be.
Right.
I mean, like debugging or troubleshooting, sure, but then
Yep.
like with the whole Aries thing, I just had no idea what to call that, and that was kind of a big stumbling block because I don't know. So thank you very much.
Yep, you're good. Hey, shout out the Fiber Oats. I got you, buddy. The wonderment, it's wonderful. I can relate to that. It's like being given back a part of my imagination. Correct. Fiber Oats. Thank you very much, sir. Let's move. We're going to move on.
more.
Now watch this move. Everyone that was concerned that I wasn't going to get those guys, see, I'm going to circle back because some people's names start with A and B and C and D. So I'm going to go circle back to the top. All right. So don't you worry your pretty little heads. Almost exactly. Questions, comments, concerns about the presentation, or whatever you're feeling like.
Well, yeah, I missed the presentation, so no questions there. But yeah, but just to add to what Snowburner X was saying, I mean, the whole umbrella of science, or the body of science, what we call science today, people conflate, like, and the whole pseudoscience thing, the problem is that there are these questions, like Nathan brought up, like, why is the sky blue, right? And they have today, then this is what we call modern science, they have this urge to have an answer for everything. So they have to skip steps and things like that and just call it science, right? That's what they actually do. It's skipping steps and, yeah, just cloaking it as science. Right?
Yeah, they're hijacking it and greasing the skids of their just so stories by using the words of science, and things like experiment are always going to be the poster child of that hijacking. But back to the guy, Snowburner X, when he was, what you're asking about is the essence of science, though. When you call it science as a label, and again, I'll just preface this by saying what we deal with specifically is natural science, and it's applying logic you also use in programming to the physical and natural world. If A then B is a bit of programming code, isn't it? It's just a bit of logic. That's all it is. So you can apply that across many different fields and have it have equal validity in terms of a logical statement that you're making. When you formulate that logical statement in programming terms into what the scientific method's actually using, if A then B, if A not B, you've got something that has to actually have something varied that can't be described in a computing language to have an outcome unless you actually process something. I.e., you've got to put something through those two gates and see which one it comes out the end of. Valid. Because it can't come through both. That's the point of the method. But that's just good logic, isn't it? And then when you call it science, it's that good logic applied to a natural phenomena. That's all it is. So your logic, if you're like, well, is this science? No, you've already said that several times. It's just not called science. That's all it's not called. Still absolutely sound logic. And logic is just logic. Programming or otherwise. Science or otherwise. He's given up on going down the list, I see.
If I could just add one more thing. Also, what I kind of find as a blueprint for all these pseudoscientific lies is that these are unknowns, unattainable. Like, these are things we're never going to know, right? What the moon is, what the stars are, what the sun is, what it's made of. All these are unanswerable questions. And that's where they're able to plug in their narratives, because no one's going to ever figure it out. So an authority can come by and just make up their story and call it science. And that's just how it works, right?
Well, they're answering what is questions with a claim to be method that employs empiricism. If I ask what is the moon or why is the sky blue, That's not actually a phenomena, is it? Why does it turn from black to blue might be claimed as a phenomena. Why does it move from one direction on the horizon to the other could be a phenomena. What is the moon isn't open to scientific inquiry. But that question still has a question mark at the end that you need not to have a question mark if you're in control of everybody. So what you do is you grease the skids of your just so story about what is the moon with scientific language. It sounds like when I tell you what the moon is, a rock that we're visiting, under the banner of science, in quotes, then you'll just believe my story as having the empiricism that science offers, even though it's not even open to scientific inquiry. It's not a cause and effect relationship when you ask what the moon is. That's what they've done, just hijacked empirical methodology, lend credence to just so stories.
All right. Let's get Dawn. I seen your message. You don't have a mic. You won't mic up. Okay, I got you. Dice Law, I'll get to you in a minute. Matt, Willie East. Questions, comments, concerns?
None. No questions, no comments, no concerns. Keep up the good fight, guys.
Thank you, sir. Nathan, let's see if I missed anyone else. 1 second. No.
Yeah, from Dice Low?
Yep. Dice Low, questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah, I joined a little late. I'd like to pass my opportunity to Extremisist. Maybe he can talk about the Coriolis effect with Nathan some more.
That comes out on Tuesday or Monday. I forget which, on the second channel.
Extremisist, you're off mute.
Okay. And I have nothing to say.
Very wise.
Hoymar, you really want to try this? All right. Questions, comments, concerns? You're off mute.
Hoymar, the last one.
Yes. Going once. Going twice. Gone. Good thing you didn't.
He came off mute.
Oh, did he? 1 second. Hoymar, questions, comments, concerns?
Well, I really just jumped in right now, so I didn't catch the context.
Okay. Anything else? How you feeling? How does it feel to be an abject globe-tard goober?
No. Come
on. Sorry about that, man.
No need.
I'm sorry. I'm a worm.
Do you want to, Kiwi? Do you want to talk about concertina wire some more?
Yeah. I do. I usually do. Yes.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you can, you kind of have two, ways of having an argument. Like, I've heard you argue with people.
Oh, brother.
Quite polite, actually.
Yeah, it just depends. If I can usually tell right off the bat whether somebody's a real true pretender clown numpty dipshit that just itching to get their ass handed to them, as opposed to somebody that has legitimate questions. I can tell that really, really fast. Yep, I have that skill.
Yep.
It's called discernment.
You have anything else you can go? Everyone else been telling us their feelings all evening. Might as well have you do it. I'll tell you what, though. You only got 3 minutes. Because I'll tell you what, I'm getting hungry.
Uh-oh.
I don't think it's fair to call them flow cards anymore.
All right, guys.
I agree.
Well,
good. Anyone else? Final call.
What?
Nope.
Oh, sorry.
No, John, you go. Off you go.
John, which John?
Well, not obviously you, because you go anyway. You don't need an invite, do you? I meant,
I was just going to say, I was just going to say that it's not really fair to call them globetards anymore, since they need to be flat earthers first to get their angle measurements before they can assert a globe. So,
ouch. And they don't believe in the globe. Back to Coriolis, they don't believe what the globe's punting, so you can't call them globers.
I didn't call it glober. I call them globetards. So you're saying I'm gonna have to change my vernacular?
Well, no. I mean, we've called them anti-flat earthers for a while, and you've not adopted that. And contextually, globetard isn't really saying globe believer. So, but the sentiment I agree with from John, refracted curvature, which is anything that associates them with the globe. It's like, why are you associating this person who's only taking the strength of belief that the Western world is behind them when you call them something associated with something they don't believe in? Why label them with globe anything when they don't believe in the globe?
Well, because I'm lazy, and that's what they used to be. Now, I recognize anti-flat earthers.
I think appropriately they'd be flat tards, since they use flat Earth measurements to assert a globe.
I can't do that.
That's what they call us.
I'm not so asked about the label, but Nathan, you've called it tonight, okay? With regards to these anti-flat earthers, we're going to stop dealing with their bullshittery, their anti-globe rhetoric. Stop entertaining it, trying to theologize it, trying to put it into some kind of known paradigms of physics, like we do with when Rufy comes up with conservation of momentum. Yeah, that kind of nonsense. Are we drawing a line under that now and just literally calling them globe deniers and not entertaining the rhetoric and just only allowing the smoking the grass Tyson, the Bill Nye, the Brian Cox rhetoric? What
policy shift?
Well, that's what I felt from Nathan tonight. So that's what I'm asking. What do you reckon? Are we done with this crap?
I'm just fascinated with why they deny the globe. That was my initial interest. I mean, Extremis has been brought up and he's ducked out pretty quickly, but he was the guy that sort of brought about this revelation by accident. Ended up not cutting off the Discord server at the end of the show. And then you hear what they're doing, and with me uploading stuff, all I heard was them denying the globe. It suddenly dawned on me, these people don't believe in the globe. Why is it that we lend them the strength of the globe and the Western world's belief in it when they fight us? Oh, well, I've got the globe belief and everyone else who believes in it with me. Well, they don't believe in it with you and you don't believe it. Let's just start pointing out that they don't believe the globe when they start arguing for, well, if you just accept conservation of momentum, all right, so you don't accept the globe and its claim of Coriolis. Just that simple. Yeah, the reason we don't have the drift, so you don't believe in the globe, will be repeated until they're really irritated with the fact that they don't believe in the globe either. Because they don't.
I like the policy shift. I like this move. This is going to be interesting. So, okay, I'm on board.
Yeah, I exampled it on one of the shows last week. I was like, I used Simon Dan as the example. Like, Simon Dan's literally telling me about our reference frames are ruined. And the globe claims 2 reference frames. So in very literal and concise way, I can describe how Simon Dan denies the globe's claim of 2 reference frames. He's a globe denier. Denies what the globe claims. The globe claims 2 reference frames. Simon Dan says they're ruined. He doesn't believe in the globe.
Yep, I agree. That's pretty clear. I put my stamp of approval on that. This would be very interesting to hear the comebacks. Why don't we get one of these guys? We got some ballers in here, man. Extremists, come on.
Well, I was going to comment that Nathan snuck attacked me the other day.
He snuck attack you.
Yes.
I didn't intend to. It was totally... maybe you haven't actually heard that. I didn't intend to have a discussion with you. I was shutting down the show. I've said this before. I have no interest in staying after I finish recording. I ended the recording, started uploading it, and just didn't shut down the Discord line. Normally I press the phone button, but I just must have missed it with my mouse. But while I'm going through the motions, I could hear you guys. And I'd already turned off my mic. That's literally the first thing I do so I don't accidentally call my wife for a coffee or something while I'm doing the outro. So the first thing I do is turn the mic off. I couldn't talk to you. and I wasn't going to get back into turning it on while I was uploading. So there was a fairly prolonged period that I listened to you guys without the ability to interrupt or anything. My mic was off. And then at some point, I was like, I want to know why they're denying the globe. That's what I posed to you, right? Extremists, that was what I was asking. Why are you denying the globe?
Well, I was telling somebody else that, you ended the show, you got out of your G+, everybody else on the panel left. You were still logged into Discord, which I saw, which I thought was kind of odd. Usually you're out of Discord pretty quick. So everybody else started talking. And I mean, you didn't even, it was 5 or 6 or whatever minutes. And then you started talking without the panel. It was kind of weird. That doesn't happen very often.
I get cut off first. I end the show. The first thing I do is, after turning my mic off, is cut off the panel.
Is he taking the mic after the last couple of weeks? Speaking without you. We've not been allowed to speak for the past 2 weeks because actually we've had a few fundies come in. We've not been allowed to speak.
Yeah, Adam's just twigged that in this instance, right, and you'll find this out on my second channel. Subscribe to Nathan Oakley channel, my second channel. There's a premiere going out on Nathan Oakley 1980, which I should have plugged. I don't know if QE's cut us off already, and we've already ended.
No, you're still live. We're still live, man.
Oh, wicked. Oh, be here or be sphere for my show on Nathan Oakley 1980 going out. No, I forget which channel. One of the channels. I'll put it in the link. Anyway, Adam's just cottoned on to the fact that because of that, it meant that the typically privileged G+ panel weren't privy to that conversation for a change. It's not normally that way. They're normally privileged to everything. In this instance, it was only by accident, but yes, the G+ panel were removed from this conversation, so none of you have heard it. So you'll get to hear it for the first time also. If you're not subscribed to my second channel, maybe you should be.
Oh, you taped it. Did you tape it?
He said he did.
Yeah,
I missed that part.
Yeah, so it's going to go out. Members have had it already, but it'll go out exclusively on my second channel for the first time to the public. I don't normally get something juicy that I can go, wow, this is nice. I can use this as an exclusive way to plug my second channel and put it on there exclusively. So that's what I'm going to do.
And make panel members tune in.
Well, you'll be extra subscribers for the second channel in this instance.
That's pretty good.
So if I would have went to Discord, I would have been privy to that.
I'm usually there late, and then as soon as you say, well, with that, then I leave. Because I know that you're, like Extremis has said, you're usually gone within seconds. So I just shut down and leave. Yep, cool.
Usually when we talk to Nathan...
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Extremis.
I was going to say, usually when we talk to Nathan, he's got his panel. Even if we're talking to Nathan, Neil and 10th Man and somebody else is yelling in the background at us. So we're really talking to like 3 or 4 others.
Oh, so you're saying that Nathan needs help?
Oh, no. But, hey, some of those guys, they provide some... It's kind of like a barbershop quartet. There's some background voices in there.
Check it out.
No, I'm not having that.
Just knocked everybody in the panel down 2 pegs.
I'm not having that.
And you.
I'm just no QE. Right. If anybody thinks that I'm singing the same melody as Nathan, you can shove it up your backside. Yeah. I have my own opinions. Yeah, admittedly, most of them align with Nathan's because they're based on reality. Yeah. But to think, if you heard me call Nathan out on a point or two tonight, to think that that's a barbershop. No. Bring your opinion. Unfortunately, yours will disalign with most of reality. That's the reality of when you come there. Yeah. So the barbershop, if you call it, is just those that are aware of reality.
Quick commendation to Adam. That was perfect, by the way, just as we rehearsed it.
Yeah, well done. And hopefully, the super chat. I don't take super chats, but I do take PayPal, Nathan. So whenever you're ready.
Hey, before we get into it, because this is a good conversation, I'm kind of liking this. Tony Wickham, another thank you, sir. I mean, you are a super chat machine. So he states, QE, I'm sorry. I am a worm. Rack my brain for about 10 minutes. That's a quote from Highlander. Yes, sir, it is. Classic. We can continue.
Is that a reverse? I was going to say, is that a reverse appeal to consensus fallacy when you say that we're a barbershop quartet?
No, 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 no.
That was quite good.
That wasn't bad.
Say luminiferous right now.
Luminiferous.
All right, you got it.
It weren't as good as earlier. I struggled with it.
Yeah, so I like this policy. I like both of these things. Nathan, you should do that more often by accident on purpose. And I like the policy change. I think this might be interesting. You know what? I might use this too. Go ahead, Nathan.
I was going to say, you can thank extremists for the policy change. If it wasn't for the fact that I accidentally ended up staying in Discord when I didn't intend to, I wouldn't have listened to, it probably was about, as he estimated, about 5 or 6 minutes of denying the globe. You know, it wouldn't have dawned on me. I'd have interrupted them long before that point if my mic wasn't off. But because I was forced to sit and listen to it, just a pure chance, because of what they were talking about, it dawned on me that they're not globe believers.
What number is that?
It's not at the moment. It's called 176B. It's got a really boring name, but it's just the members who are looking for it. It's just the one with the blue save all flat Earth debate background. It's not very exciting. I haven't done anything with it. I just haven't. It wasn't in my upload schedule, so I didn't know what to do with it. So I stuck it on the second channel with the schedule for this coming week, and gave it to the members. But other than that, it's as raw as it gets. I mean, it's below standard in terms of the production quality, but definitely above standards in terms of revelation. And there's a lot of swearing.
Yeah. Okay, hold on a second. I need to know when I can listen to it. For goodness sake, sir.
That's what I'm asking for, John. Can we get an unlisted link in the war room? And then, because I think
there is no unlisted link because it's members only. What that effectively means is that it is unlisted, but unless you remember, you couldn't watch it. I can tell you when it comes out. It comes out on the 20th at 9 p.m. UK time. What day is that? Saturday today, so that's Monday, right?
Yeah.
Monday at the typical time that a Flat Earth debate uncut and after show comes out on my second channel. If you're already subscribed, that is 9 p.m. UK time. Night it got pushed forward by an hour to 10 because we're doing BALLBUSTERS. That's why there's a premiering stream going out right now as we speak. But at the usual time, basically on Monday, that's when you can watch that.
Okay.
Like I say, it's as rough and ready as it gets, unfortunately, because I hadn't intended to make that, and it hasn't sat in my upload schedule, so I haven't made a thumbnail. I haven't given it a good title. I don't really know what to do with it other than say go and watch it and subscribe to my second channel. Or become a member.
Yeah, I was going to say something like that. Become a member. Can't you just grandfather us in?
The price of $2, I can definitely grandfather.
Yeah, I figured that. All right.
I'm waiting till Monday.
Let's see if we can get an example of your policy change. Kessler, I seen you come in here. Questions, comments, concerns over the presentation. Yeah, that's a good idea to stay quiet because Nathan's going to unleash this on you guys. I'm just going to sit back and listen for the first few days. Fair enough. All right.
Maybe this will come to revelation to people like Simon Dan. I mean, I've said it, but I didn't exactly trim it out and turn it into a video or anything. Maybe that's something that needs to be done. It needs to be highlighted with an example like Simon Dan specifically, saying, here's how Simon Dan simply doesn't believe what the globe claims. Here's how he denies it. So he's a globe denier. He doesn't believe the globe at all.
Bunch of heretics running around saying whatever nonsense they want to.
Very interesting.
Going against the church of heliocentrism is heresy. They don't appreciate that. You don't have to realize that you're disagreeing with the religion of heliocentrism to be a heretic. You just are. Simon Dan's a heretic.
What are you drawing a line under is something we kind of shared with the anti-flat earthers, which is the recognition of the failures of the Bohr model. So we've engaged in it. What I think you're asking for in a sea change is, okay, recognize it. And the second you do recognize it, don't engage anymore. You don't need to go in and tell them why that's even wrong within their assumptions. Just draw a line under it and point out to them fundamentally they're denying their religion. They're denying the fundamental tenets of their faith. I think it's a great point. And I'll round out here, Q, if I can, because it shows like this are great, because we've gone over old stuff, but you've let us ramble and go off beast a little bit here and there, even me on insulin.
I have,
like
because it's too hot to shoot today.
Is that what it is?
It's so stinking hot for the whole week. I couldn't shoot, so that's why. So go on. Nathan, do you mind him closing out?
I meant for me, not for anybody else.
Oh, you just meant you're going to close out yourself.
Yeah, don't come back to me is what I meant. There's no need. I know I know that. Well, that's why I felt the need to preface it. Even though the preface has now gone on longer than probably the summation. But point being, it's a good show because going over old stuff, but letting us ramble like this in relation to where we are today, it highlights a lot of stuff, and it brings what you have held for a long time that stands true, but it makes it slap the present a little bit more resonant. And I think I'm down with Nathan, which is what I thought I spotted. You know what I mean? I'm glad you are. And I think it's probably what we should all do on the Discord, and everybody is. No, I'm done, mate. I've argued this crap long enough. Stick your globulus where the sun don't shine. If you're telling me you deny the globe, I'm with you, bro. I'm with you.
I like it. I do. The more I think about it, I like it.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Globulus expert Brian from Ireland.
You
Go ahead.
say welcome to the
Globulus expert. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's not on globulus. I just want to make a statement. And the statement won't be popular with some people, but I'm going to make it anyway. The 8 inches per mile squared is a measurement of perspective. The perspective measurement.
What?
Not an earth measurement, a perspective measurement.
No, wrong.
Yeah, that's incorrect.
Linear.
Really?
Perspective's linear. Squared function can't represent something linear because they're not the same.
Let me support Brian.
Yeah,
the
thank you.
approximation of 8 inches per square mile.
No, per mile squared. Per mile squared, not per square mile. Per mile squared, you plum.
I love you. Thank you. I'm on my foot. I'm well done.
Right, before Adam loses his point, right? What Adam's about to say is that in terms of if you extend out 8 inches per mile squared, about let's say 3,000 miles, then you'll have this squared function be far more apparent at the extremities. However, within the first, say, 1,000 miles, it almost exactly represents linear perspective, even though you have got a squared function, which isn't so apparent within the first 1,000 miles. Right, Adam?
Yes, but no. So, yes, that's the first bit. The second point, though, is that's the qualification of why Brian's using 8 inches per mile squared. The point he's making is that the position of Polaris in the sky, okay, is given an angular deviation. That deviation equates to nautical miles. Now, if we were to presuppose that the measurable 180 or 90, depending on your perspective, would be taken off of a flat plane, and you take those angular measurements and pervert them and say that if I turn those angles into a radius value, and so I convert them into 3, multiply the number of nautical miles per degree by 360 to generate a circumference value, then the number I generate from that circumference value will give me an R value. From that R value is how I presuppose the 8 inches per mile as an approximation as you described. But what Brian's saying is...
So what you're saying is The way you arrive at 8 inches per mile
Yes.
squared for the curvature of the ground moving away at you at that measurement from your feet into the distance is by back engineering elevation angle measurement to Polaris to give you dual radii, which ultimately results in 8 inches per mile squared drop. Right on, Brian. I take it all back. I was completely wrong to disagree with you on the
I'm
spot.
not taking it back, and there is no dual radii.
I'm afraid that, yeah, but it gets worse than that because 8 inches per mile squared is a drop function.
That's true.
It's rise over run. It's rise over run in surveying, which is horizontals and verticals. It's a drop function. It's a slope, not a curve.
The slope is a curve.
Well, if you were going to do it more talks about a gradient, if you know what I mean, than
Yeah, I think we can
if you're doing
banter.
rise over run, it's slope. If you know what I mean.
I
But
see
that's
what you
8 inches per mile squared is.
I see what you're saying with the slope, but if you go into what curvature is, maybe not a curve, but curvature is, it's defined as a change in elevation of a slope. But we can get into very specific things with that, which is kind of sidebarred to the whole discussion. I'll entertain what you have to say. I just don't want to entertain it now because my blood sugar's dropping because I could eat. I'm so hungry right now, I can't even think straight.
You trying any fried crappies? Crappies.
No, they're not crappies. They're crappies, like you said, and that's tomorrow night. So, Nathan, any final thoughts on what Brian said? He's just trying to friggin' start something.
I think he's got a very good point. I think he's got a very good point.
Yeah,
he's made that point on flat Earth debate on many occasions in terms of the transposition. It's usually John's refracted curvature's duty to do that normally when I've missed it. But he's got a very good point.
Fair enough. Maybe we'll hear it during the week. We ain't going to hear it right out because I'm about at the end. But it was a great show. I like letting it go a little bit beyond. So just for me, before I'll let Nathan close up shop, just remember Tuesday is the second half of the Coriolis effect that's really got him in a tizzy. I don't know why. We've been saying it for a long time. It's just, I don't know, for some reason recently it's just got their panties in a bunch, which is cool. So, and the next Ballbusters will do episode 4. That's 2 weeks from now, so stay tuned. Nathan, sir, can you please take us home?
Yeah, first and foremost, obviously a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you tuned in live and smashed the super chat in the Quantum Erasers channel. And obviously a massive thank you to all of today's Ballbusters and live participants from the general public for making today's live show possible. I've got a show that's going out right now, so I'll spam the chat so you can pick up a link to Flat Earth Debate 1673 Uncut and After Show, which is going out for the first time over again on my second channel. So subscribe there with that link. We're discussing Danny Faulkner and Coriolis effect, which, as QE says, is going to get discussed on his show moving forward. Yeah, another massive thank you for everyone tuning in. I've been Nathan Oakley, and we will see you all on the next Ballbusters.